last saw action on the field, the Red Sox were making baseball history. Now, a new season is upon us where everyone thinks they have a chance to win, even teams where history has given way to a brand new start. And welcome everybody to beautiful, sunny, warm Viera, Florida for the first of 13 spring training games this March here on ESPN. Today we've got the New York Mets against the brand new Washington Nationals from Space Coast Stadium here in Viera. A lot of optimism for both of these franchises. Of course, the Mets made so many moves in the offseason. They're excited. The Nationals, a brand new beginning for them. Willie Randolph taking over as manager of the Mets. Frank Robinson's all smiles. This team finally has a home. Hi, everybody.
Carlos Beltran of the new look New York Mets. Hey, you're wearing blue. The fans are excited. How exciting is this for you as you're getting ready to play your first spring training game with the Mets?
I just got to say that I feel happy. Everything's going well in spring training. As a team, we're trying to put things together to win ball games. This is today. It's going to be the first game of spring training. I'm just very happy that I'm playing.
Get the game going. Now, Pedro signed right before you did. How much of an impact did that have on your signing with the Mets?
Well, I just got to say I know Omar since I was 18 years old, and Omar and I we're good friends, and but everything started when the Mets went out and signed Omar Minaya and gave him the opportunity to be a general manager. I know Omar, no talent, no player, you know how to get to them. And I saw Omar went to Dominican Republic, signed Pedro. It's got to say that it was a big influence on me, and I know that the Mets they were going to a different direction, and we decided to meet in Puerto Rico, and I just got to say the meeting, everything went right, and it was easy for me to decide to go to the Mets.
Well, Carlos, good luck and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Kick back and relax and enjoy some spring training baseball. We've got the Mets and the Nationals. Baseball is next here on ESPN. And welcome back to Space Coast Stadium here in Viera. We're on the east coast of Florida, the home of the new Washington Nationals, as we show you the starting lineup for the visiting New York Mets. And they're going to have a lot of speed in this lineup, especially up at the top. And, of course, the big acquisition, Carlos Beltran, who got the richest contract of anybody in the offseason. 38 combined home runs last year, 42 stolen bases. And with Reyes and Matsui, Steve, a couple of switch hitters hitting right in front of them. I mean, this lineup has a chance to really do some things.
Well, there's no question. They have some speed now. I think the big question is going to be the run producers in the middle of the lineup. Will they be able to produce? Mike Piazza's had some injuries. Can Cliff Floyd bounce back after his injuries as well? And I think that's going to be the big question, how many runs they score.
And Jeff, a young right-hander with a pretty special arm, if he can just keep that arm healthy.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing for the Washington Nationals is can they keep their guys in the starting rotation healthy all year long and being productive? If they can't do that, it's going to be another year of failure for them. They're playing in a new place, playing in Washington. This is a club that really needs to step it up a little bit and really encourage that fan base right off the bat.
And by the way, whichever one of the three of us says Expos when they meant to say Nationals is buying dinner tonight.
Good idea.
Because it is going to happen. It's spring training for us too, but the Nationals getting ready for their first game. Willie Randolph getting ready for his first game as manager of the New York Mets. And Steve, I guess you can't have better training than being from New York, playing in New York, coaching in New York. This is, I guess, the natural evolution of things for Willie Randolph.
No question about it. He has the resume to do the job in New York. He is a New Yorker by birth. He also has played in New York on championship teams, coached on championship teams, worked with young players, veteran players. He's done it all.
Joe Brinkman calling the balls and strikes today as they take that ball out of play, presumably because it's the first pitch thrown in the spring training history of the new Washington Nationals. And Jose Reyes is the batter. He has moved back to shortstop this year after they had him at second and Matsui at short. Now they've decided to flip-flop them, put Reyes back at his natural position. And just 21 years of age, like Armas staying healthy. If Jose Reyes can stay healthy for the Mets, he's got a chance to be a special player.
Well, the one thing that you said earlier, Steve, when we were first coming on the air was what better guy as a manager to be able to teach these guys to be able to work together than Willie Randolph, a guy that has played that middle infield position and knows how to do it and do it well. and have Reyes and Matsui up the box and teach them how to do it, because that really ultimately is going to be the strength of your ball club.
There's no doubt. He's a good manager for the Mets because he understands New York, but also because the most specific need they have is to get this middle infield situation stabilized with Matsui and Reyes. And it's not easy for an infielder to move from the shortstop position where you played your whole life to go to second base and have your back turned on a double play turn to that, and there's nobody better. Willie Randolph could turn double plays when he played, and what a nice mentor for these young infielders to have.
3-2 pitch on the way to Reyes. And the swing of the pop-up left side of the infield in foul territory. It's Vinny Castilla, the Nationals' third baseman, over to make the catch right in front of the Mets dugout. And the Nationals, by and large, are the Expos of 2004, but they've made some pickups. And Vinny Castilla, we know it's not going to be Colorado numbers, but he'll still swing the bat and drive in some runs.
Well, I think in Vinny's situation, I think his chance on this ball club is to be a veteran mentor, to allow some guys like Nick Johnson, even though he's played in New York and played in some championships, some of these other guys to get used to going out and being able to perform like a championship ball club. I mean, when you play with the Atlanta Braves and you play with the Rockies like he did when he first came up, there's something to be said about a guy that's been around a long time.
Pitch in for a strike to Matsui, 1-1. Now playing second base and getting accustomed to it, and Willie Randolph says he's pretty pleased with the way things have gone so far. They'll get a better sense for how the adjustment is going for Matsui now that the games have started. Broken to bat grounder, pulled foul, 1-2. From what we hear and what we read, Willie Randolph's running a pretty tight ship as manager of the New York Mets, huh?
He is. I think that one of the things he's done is he's established some rules, and we see Matsui kind of get jammed here. The pitchers tend to be ahead of the hitters a little bit this time of year, and I think that Willie Randolph came in. No facial hair. He also said in the clubhouse he wanted headphones on, no blaring music. And I think that what he did, again, those things don't make them a better team, but what it does is it establishes him as the leader and the guy in charge. And I think he came in. It's the right thing to do, to come in a little forceful. You can always back off later.
You saw his credentials as a player. They're pretty impressive. He's also won 6 World Championships, 2 as a player, 4 as a coach, all with the Yankees. He's also got them working out a lot longer than major league players are used to doing. They're used to coming in the morning and having a 2 or 3 hour workout. 2-2 swung on and missed. Matsui gone 2 down. But Jeff, how would you feel if a new manager came to town and said, all right, guys, you got to be there at 8:30 and you're working until 4 as we take a look at the strikeout pitch from Armas?
Well, you see this breaking ball from Armas there, strikes out Matsui. Kaz, and the thing about it, that as a new manager, I think you have to have or establish some type of presence when you come to a new ball club, and I think that's very important, especially the way the Mets have gone about their business over the last few years. I mean, we're not talking about a team with no history. We're talking about the New York Mets. And they should be playing a lot better baseball. And sometimes I believe discipline, especially when it's put in right off the bat, can make a lot of difference in how you play.
Well, from all accounts, the guy in the batter's box right now, Carlos Beltran, and they got him obviously for his ability, offensive, defensive on the bases. But from all accounts, too, he has really done a nice job, even though he's only 27, kind of taking the younger players under his wing and inviting some of them to work out with him, talking to some of the younger Latin players about what's expected of them, working a lot with Reyes on getting a lead and base stealing and that kind of thing. And he's a pretty soft-spoken guy, but apparently, Steve, within the clubhouse, he's becoming a bit of a leader for them.
Well, he's making $17 million, and he doesn't act like a guy making $17 million. Everything's easy. He works, though. This guy works hard, and he's been a leader for some of these young players already.
Now the Washington Nationals are out of the game quickly. Tony Armas a 3-up, 3-down first. The Nationals will come up against Tom Glavine when we come back. Traffic's still a problem here. There's tons and tons of people trying to get here to Space Coast Stadium to see the first spring training game for the Washington Nationals. As you can see, the lineup of cars is a long one to get into the ballpark, and the game's already going on. Here's the starting lineup for the Nationals, and again, by and large, they are the Expos of 2004, but they've added Vinny Castilla, they've added Cristian Guzman, the shortstop ex of the Twins, and they're the numbers on Castilla with Colorado, granted, but still led the National League with 131 RBIs. Last year, they're hoping for a healthy Nick Johnson. They've added Jose Guillen, 100 RBI guy with the Angels last year, who was traded after some disputes and had that on-field tantrum and so forth, but a talented player. As Andy Chavez leads it off against Tom Glavine. It'll be Chavez, Cristian Guzman, and then Jose Vidro. And everybody around the Nationals says this guy is the key. If he can get on base consistently, if he can draw some walks, You look at the rest of the lineup, Steve, and you and I were talking last night looking at this team. You tend to think of them as an expansion team because they're new in Washington, but they got a lot of talent on this team.
I talked to Frank Robinson before the game, and this is a different team than he's ever managed here with this group of players. I mean, they've added some veteran players, and they've always had young guys that they've had growing pains. They have some veterans that can play this game and swing the bat a little bit. This is a much different lineup, much deeper lineup, much more potent than they've ever had.
Pitch inside from Glavine to Chavez. Jeff, when a guy's been around as long as Tom Glavine has, how does he approach spring training?
Well, I think the biggest thing for Glavine, and I was talking to him during batting practice, is building up arm strength gradually. And this is not a situation for Glavine where he's got to come out and make a ball club like you have a lot of young pitchers that are trying to do. I think what Tom Glavine is doing is trying some new things, maybe working on changeups and cutters inside the right-handers, maybe even developing a different kind of run on his changeup away from right-handers. This is a time as a veteran that you do those things.
Cristiano Guzman takes a pitch down to the dirt, ball one, signed to a 4-year deal for about $17 million. And I think that's when everybody started realizing, hey, these aren't the Expos anymore. They're going to sign some people. Guzman, a switch hitter with a lot of ability, kind of frustrated the Twins at times for being inconsistent. As he smacks one up the middle, a solid base hit. And there's the first spring training hit for the new Washington Nationals. We are, by the way, in what used to be the Marlins spring training facility, and you can see that from a mile away as you pull up to the stadium. Everything is teal. It's a pretty nice ballpark, though, don't you think, guys?
Beautiful.
Beautiful park. What a day.
You walk out onto this field, and I know that they've gotten some rewards or awards for the upkeep of this field. That infield is about as nice as it comes, especially during spring training.
Here's Vidro, the second baseman, taken outside, ball one. Vidro signed an extension in the offseason before we all knew that Montreal was moving to Washington, although he said he had a pretty good feeling things were going to be better. Guy coming back from knee surgery. I don't know how many times we'll say this today, but if they can keep him healthy, this guy's a special player.
Oh, there's no question about it. He really is the stabilizer on this team. He's been here the longest and really has had the most successful career. He's an all-star second baseman and terrific two-way player, and really the guy, I think, to allow the new infielders to join him and be part of this team and really lead them into the season.
Grounds one to the right side. Matsui to Reyes, back to first to Minkiewicz for the double play.
How many times will we be calling that?
The new look Met infield does a nice job turning two, and we're through an inning scoreless here in Florida. Back here for the top of the second into Viera, Florida, along with Steve Phillips, Jeff Brantley, and Sam Ryan. I'm Dan Shulman. And no score after an inning between the Mets and Nationals. And we saw the Mets turn a nice double play to end the bottom of the first. Kaz Matsui, the second baseman, to Jose Reyes, the shortstop, to Doug Minkiewicz, the first baseman, all pleasing new manager Willie Randolph. A lot of different new things about the Mets this year, and one of them is the guy standing in, the aforementioned Minkiewicz, the first baseman, most of the time, it would appear, for the Mets this year. The big cat, Andres Galarraga, is on the team, and he'll get some time. But by putting a guy over at first base with the defensive ability that Minkiewicz has, I mean, they're going to turn deep easy, scoop that ball out of the dirt. Steve, he's going to save everybody else errors all season long.
Well, there's no question about that. He has the Mets have really struggled defensively over the last few years, and they pursued Carlos Delgado pretty hard at first base. When they lost out, they quickly moved to get Doug Minkiewicz and bring him in. And I think with the infielders they have, it's not a bad move, because with David Wright at third base and Reyes and Matsui, they have very athletic players who are going to try to do things they shouldn't sometimes. And they have strong arms, they're going to air some throws. To have a guy that can save those errors, knock the ball down and pick it out of the dirt and get some outs, is going to go an awfully long way to helping this team.
Armas on the mound for Washington, pumps into strike 3-1. You can relate because the 99 infield, a whole different cast of characters. But when John Olerud was over there at first, didn't the Mets infield set some records in terms of fewest errors?
They did. Olerud, Alfonso, Ordonez, and Ventura around the infield back then, and fewest errors ever committed by an infield. And tell you what, it makes a pitching staff feel pretty darn good when you've got guys behind you that can pick it. And we're going to see that double play right here. Ground ball to Kaz Matsui. Very nicely done. Nice transfer. Reyes, quick release. And Minkiewicz, nice pick out of the dirt. Exactly what they need. Now, Minkiewicz has talked about adjusting to this new team. And He said the one thing that he's going to have the toughest time adjusting to is the carry on the throws from Jose Reyes. He says the ball just has that last little bit of giddy up at the end, and he has to just make sure that he can get his glove to it at times because he has such a strong arm.
Here's Jason Phillips, the Met catcher today. Figures to be the backup catcher during the season as you get a close look at some of the action on the field here today in Viera. Mike Piazza, Jeff, is moving back behind the plate after last year's kind of half-and-half experiment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's the right move to make. I mean, I don't know that Piazza is going to throw out 50% of base stealers during this season, but I mean, let's look at the game the way it's being played now. Guys are not running like they have in the past. I mean, we're talking about home run central, and I don't know that he's going to have that much challenge. And I think if he's comfortable behind the plate, and you've got Minkiewicz, you've got Beltran, and you've got Piazza in the middle of that order with those two speed burners at the top, that's offense.
There's a high fly ball into right center field, and it'll be Guillen to make the catch. Minkiewicz back first, one down in the inning. And down in the seats, I believe, our Sam Ryan is with the new GM of the New York Mets, Omar Minaya. Sam?
That's right, Dan. He put a smile on a lot of people's faces back in New York. Omar Minaya was on the other side with the Expos. Now you come to the Mets, and you're spending a lot of money. But what was your first order of business when you got to the Mets?
Well, the first order of business, of course, was to evaluate what we had in the organization as far as talent. And then once we evaluated that, it was to implement and fill our needs. And we felt that pitching and we felt that defense was important. And we were just so lucky to be able to get Carlos Beltran on top of that.
And Beltran had very nice things to say about you in the pregame interview. Now, with Beltran, when did you realize, you guys actively pursued him, when did you realize that, hey, we're legitimate players here, we're not just being used for leverage?
Well, I think a week before he signed, maybe or two. Once we flew to San Juan and met with him, I felt that when we left that meeting, we were really going to be players in this. I think that meeting, we felt that it was not only going to be about the dollars, it was going to be about the trust that he was going to have in the organization, and the fact that our front office, we just felt a connection in that meeting when we went to San Juan.
Now, Omar, you mentioned pitching. Everybody knows Pedro. Back in Boston, he's taken so much criticism for being all about Pedro, being a me guy. He comes here, he shows up 9 days early. What did he show you?
He showed me that he's Pedro Martinez, probably one of the greatest pitchers that we've seen. Hall of Famer, a World Series champion, a great teammate, and a friend, and helps a lot of the poor people. And he's exciting because he's very unpredictable in a ways, but he creates excitement wherever Pedro is. And he showed me the same Pedro that I've always known. He's just not what people make him out to be.
Let's talk about the future. What's next on your wish list, and will you address the bullpen?
Well, we're always going to try to improve the team. I will say that our bullpen is a bullpen that is not, if you want to say we got Looper back there, and we have Heredia, and we have DeJohn, and you always like to say that, you want to be able to get guys maybe that have besides those guys, it's a battle right now in spring training for that bullpen. But we're always going to try to look to improve the club, and we're never done trying to improve the club. Bullpen, pitching, offense, we look at all areas to improve this club.
Mike Cameron, we were talking off camera about him. Move to right. What's his situation?
Mike is healing from that wrist injury that he had. He's swinging the bat already. He's really looking good. We hope to have him by opening day. We're going to probably be conservative, unless when he's 100% sure. So it's going to be close to opening day or a little bit after opening day when he's going to be ready to go. He's going to play right field. Before we went out and got Carlos Beltran, Mike kind of gave us the endorsement to go get this guy because Mike is a team player, and Mike is it's about the team, and he's going to have a little bit of adjustment playing right field. We understand that, and we're talking that thing through.
Is he on your team opening day?
Yes, I hope he's going to be on our team, because when a guy hits 30 home runs, a guy steals 20 bases, and he's a plus defender, we hope that he's going to be on it. And if you ask me, he's going to be on our team, he will be on our team in opening day, yes, I think he will.
Okay, thanks a lot, Omar. We'll be back with more of the Mets and the Nationals after this.
They've sold better than 20,000 seasons tickets already. From what we understand, their jerseys, their hats, all that kind of stuff, Steve, is selling like crazy. This guy's skipping work and then announcing it to everybody.
Well, I tell you what, they've done a tremendous job with the uniforms. The colors look great, and I tell you, the players are excited about it to be able to have a home finally. But they are the hottest property out there right now. It was the Red Sox, obviously, after their success last year, but the Washington Nationals memorabilia or merchandise is really the property that right now is selling the most.
Swing and a miss by Jose Guillen, 1-2 the count. Last year with the Angels had a great season statistically, as you can see, but it all ended in a bad way for him. Late in September, he objected to being removed for a pinch runner in the middle of a game. Look out as Glavine trying to come inside on a 1-2 pitch. Hits him up and in, and Guillen will take his base. But Guillen objected to being taken out for a pinch runner. Had an argument through his batting helmet in the general direction of Socha. As you can see, that ball got him near the rib cage. And then, Jeff, that was the last time Jose Guillen ever suited up for the Angels. The Angels said, that's it. You're suspended for the rest of the regular season and whatever playoffs we may reach. And they traded him in the offseason. And Guillen's been with about 7 or 8 teams right now, despite a lot of ability.
Well, there has to be something there that, whether it's an anger management course or whatever he needs to be, as we see him get picked off first base. But like you said, Dan, the guy has a tremendous amount of talent. In my mind, he's a 5-tool player. He can do just about whatever it takes on the baseball field to play. And when you have a conversation with him, this guy does not come across as being a volatile guy, a bad guy, anything other than, I just want to play. I want to play every day. And early in his career, that was taken away from him, or at least he felt like it was taken away from him. And I think that is the reason that he responds the way that he does now. If I'm the Washington Nationals at this point and I'm Frank Robinson, I try to figure out a way where I can help this kid from a mental standpoint so that he can go out and help my ball club. Because if he's right mentally, they're going to score some runs.
Swing and a miss by Wilkerson, 1-1 count. Wilkerson, a guy with power, draws a ton of walks. He's hitting 5th. Guillen hitting cleanup. Vidro hitting 3rd. Vinny Castilla hitting 6th. Nick Johnson, if healthy, hitting 7th. As Wilkerson flares one down the left field line, but just foul. I guess the question is, guys, how good is this team? Is this a 70-win team, a 500 team, a long shot contender? How good are the Nationals?
Well, it's interesting. They have made some, I think, quality additions to this club. People are complaining about the contracts they don't like, but if you just look at the players, I think they've improved themselves tremendously defensively. Guillen's a very good outfielder with a good arm. Christian Guzman and Vinny Castillo will catch the balls they get to. They don't have great range, but they are going to make plays. They're not going to beat themselves like what the former Expos teams used to do. Their former, the young kids used to make mistakes and they would compound themselves. With veterans, they make plays, and we see the acquisitions there. And I think that they really have stabilized this team with veteran talent. And I think that they're going to have a pretty decent offensive club with some speed and some power. The question is going to be the pitching and whether the health of the pitching will stand up to allow them to give them a chance to win baseball games. But if the pitching does stay healthy, they've got some pretty good arms out there, JB.
Steve, you talk about the health of their pitching, and we watch time and time again Frank Robinson just wear out that carpet walking from the dugout out to the mound. He is not going to stand for his pitchers to come into ball games and walk hitters. That's not going to go across the board with him. If they can challenge hitters from the opposition, they've got some arms that can win ball games.
Here's Vinny Castilla getting his first at bat, swinging a foul tip. 2 outs, nobody on. Here in the Nationals' second, no score. And Jeff, I think can safely assume that Tom Glavine's just going to go the 2 innings here today. What have you seen from him so far?
Well, I've seen a nice changeup on the ball that's away. He's pitching on both sides of the plate, which we know of Tom Glavine. And I was talking to him before the ballgame. He said last year, he said things just kind of fell apart. He said it wasn't from anything that I felt like that I did. I felt like I continued to pitch the way that I always have. But sometimes you run into bad streaks in baseball, and he ran into one the second half.
As you can see, 38 wins away from joining the 300 club, and there's no question that the last couple of years being in New York, that appears to have cost him some wins, not playing with as good a team behind him. But he says he feels like he can pitch for 2 or 3 more years, and he still thinks 300 is a possibility.
Well, he's a really classy guy, and I was the general manager for the Mets when we brought him in, and certainly he had expectations to try to get to close to 300 wins by the time this contract was over, and he probably might have been a lot closer if he had stayed in Atlanta, but he has not looked back over his shoulder. He's just willing to move forward and do the best he can.
Can't get to that slow chopper, and then Matsui and Reyes appear to have a little indecision on the infield who should take the ball, and by the time they decide, Castilla's safely across.
Again, spring training is for the learning curve, and that's what we're seeing right now. You have a Dominican shortstop and a Japanese second baseman. You have a second baseman playing a new position and communication. And this play right here, this is all about communication. You know, Matsui was a little bit hesitant laying back, figuring it was Reyes' ball, and Reyes deferred a little bit as well. And I'm sure Willie Randolph at the end of the inning will pull them together in the clubhouse with Matsui's interpreter and try to communicate to make sure that they understand what went wrong right there.
You have to remember Matsui playing shortstop all those years. He's used to being the captain of the infield. Well, when you're playing second base, the captain is now on the other side of the diamond. That is definitely Reyes' ball. It's just a matter of that communication and knowing that ahead of time.
So even though the shortstop is 21, he's the captain of the infield. That's the way it goes?
Absolutely.
He's the captain of the infield.
You know, you look at it and you say, well, that's kind of a sloppy play. For everybody in New York who's saying, well, this isn't going to work, this is exactly what you want to happen in spring training. You want to work these kinks out now, make these mistakes right now so that you're prepared to make the plays later.
Matsui gets another chance, and the flip to Reyes to force the runner and end the inning. So 2 shutout innings for Tom Glavine in his spring training debut. And we're scoreless through 2 here in Florida. Casey outside Space Coast Stadium here in Viera, Florida. Glad you're along with us for the first of 13 spring training telecasts this March on ESPN and ESPN2. No score, top of the 3rd. The debut of the Washington Nationals as they take on division rival the New York Mets. And a new pitcher on the mound now for Washington, left-hander Michael Hinckley, who split last year between A-ball and Double-A, and one of the top prospects they feel in this organization. Big lanky left-hander with some very good numbers at a couple of different stops. Here comes Wilkerson across the line. But he can't get there. Eric Valent is leading off the inning for the New York Mets as they continue to file in. We still see a lineup of cars going down that main drag outside the stadium. And there are the numbers. Pretty impressive. A strikeout to walk, strikeout to winning. Lots of good numbers there for Mike Hinckley.
I tell you, the Nationals love this kid. He went from A-ball to Double-A last year, and they really, really like him. You know, it's just we talk about spring training, what it is for each player. For Tom Glavine, it's just getting in shape and getting ready to get your work. For this young kid, it's his first spring training.
Vidro ranging to his left, and on to Johnson at first to get Valent 1 down.
Well, before the game, I was out just early for batting practice, and I saw Michael Hinckley go over to the first baseline, kind of kneel down on the grass, kind of touch the dirt a little bit. And you could just see this young guy so excited, being in his first big league camp, you know, getting a chance here. And I asked him if his parents were going to be able to see him, and he said no. He said, but fortunately, because it's on TV, they'll be able to tune in. They're both school teachers. His mom, Lynn, and his dad, David, are back in Moore, Oklahoma. And he's got 2 twin brothers, 13-year-old, and a sister that just got married. He's giving the whole family story. I mean, it's just, that's you know, you talk to the veteran players, but sometimes these young kids are so excited, so glad to be here.
Oh, yeah.
And this kid, this won't be his only spring training, that's for sure.
Anderson Hernandez pinch hitting for Tom Glavine rolls one out to second, and he is retired for the second out.
I think when you look at a guy like Hinckley, and you look at his statistics from last year, and I think this is what Frank Robinson, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, almost 160 innings that this kid pitched, and he only walked 40 guys. Well, that's what you want when you get a guy to the big leagues, especially a young guy. You don't want somebody that's intimidated by the batter that stands at the plate.
A quick 2 outs on ground balls, and now muscles up on one and throws about a 58-footer toward Jose Reyes. And Hinckley, not necessarily a guy they're looking to stick with the big club this year, but this is his first spring training and a chance for Frank Robinson to get a look at him and maybe keep him in the back of his mind for later on. When they were the Expos last year, so many pitching injuries really derailed any opportunity the team had of contending. Most of the season, 3 of the planned 5 starters were on the DL with various injuries, so Frank Robinson really had his work cut out for him last year. I'm sure he's a proponent of the saying you can never have too much pitching.
Well, that's one of the things they talk about. They really want to maintain their depth right now. And Jim Bowden kind of intimated he's probably not going to make our team, but boy, he's a sleeper because we really, really like him. He was asking, he said, is Piazza coming today? He said, is Cliff Floyd going to be here? Cameron, he wanted to face him, get them all out of the way in his first time out there. He also wanted to make sure we called out to his girlfriend, too. He said, you know, he talked about his family, but Leanna, his girlfriend at home, too, he wanted to get a plug into her.
Vidro diving, can't come up with it, and Jose Reyes, who turned around to bat a right-handed against the lefty Hinckley, bounces one up the middle for his first base hit of the afternoon.
filling up the strike zone. Even though he was behind in the count, he's still able to locate the ball down and away from a right-handed hitter. Ball just happens to get through the infield. But I would imagine that for a left-handed pitcher, even though he's as young as he is, when you've got a left-hander that fills up the strike zone, especially as we go along in spring training, so that's oftentimes guys like you, Steve, you change your mind a little bit.
Excited about these guys.
I like this kid a little more.
Frank Robinson to look it on as young Michael Hinckley now faces Kaz Matsui. Reyes at first, 2 down. Let's see if he's in the mood to run. The Mets have talked about running a lot more often this year. And Reyes actually got picked off twice in an inter-squad game, Steve, on Monday. So he's excited to run. He's just maybe a little too excited to run.
Willie Randolph said when you open the barn door, the colt takes off running. Reyes wanted to go. He's been thinking about it all year, and his legs are finally right. That's been his problem, his hamstring problems, and he wants to run.
Problem that Reyes had, they decided after that game on Monday, is he had too big a lead. He had so big of a lead that in the back of his mind he was worried about how do I get back if they throw over. And Carlos Beltran went up to him and said, hey, listen, kiddo, you're fast. You don't need that big of a lead. Take a bit smaller of a lead and worry about going to second. Don't worry about having to get back to first.
That's good. You don't underestimate the value of Carlos Beltran helping with base stealing, because he has one of the highest success rates in the game. Beltran does with his stolen base attempts. And I think that Reyes and even Matsui will benefit from having Beltran on this team.
I think that just comes from being able to read pitchers, knowing what guys' tendencies are, and pass that right along to the young player.
Matsui lines one to left field. Wilkerson right there, and the inning is over as Hinckley gives up a base hit, but nothing more. Nationals coming up in a scoreless game as we head to the bottom of the third. No score going to the bottom of the third. Tom Glavine, 2 solid innings in his spring training debut, and he's standing by with our Sam Ryan. Sam?
All right, thanks a lot, Dan. And Tom, 38 years old now, 38 years young, I should phrase it that way. How has your spring training approach changed throughout the years?
Not a lot. I mean, I think you understand what you have to do to get ready, and you're a little bit more patient with it than I probably was when I was a younger player. I think as a younger player, you're either in a position of trying to make the team or you're in a position of trying to impress somebody. So the older you get, you're not worried about impressing anybody. You're just worried about getting out there and not hurting anything.
But impressive numbers throughout your career, 38 away from 300 victories. That's going to come up over time as you get closer and closer. Could be 2-3 years. Is that something that's that important to you?
Well, it's important, but I'm just trying to approach it a year at a time. I mean, obviously, I want to have as good a year as I can this year. That'll be good for me and my pursuit of 300. It'll be great for the team if I can have a good year. So, just trying to keep things, I guess, on track. If I can do it in 3 years, I think it'll be important to me. But if I have to do it in 4 or 5, then I'm not so sure how important it'll be to have to do that.
Now, with the acquisition of Pedro, how does that change your role here?
Well, it drops everybody in the rotation down a notch. So, Pedro obviously is a great pitcher. We're thrilled to have him and looking for big things from him. So, one of the great things it does, obviously, it gives us that pure power guy at the top of the rotation, and it helps us to have a real deep rotation, which over the course of time should be an advantage for us.
Okay, off-season must have been tough for you. No NHL hockey. You were drafted by the Kings. How'd you get through it?
It was hard. I had to get my fill with my son who's playing. So I get out there with him and skate a little bit, watch him as much as I could. But it was tough. I mean, it was tough watching it and listening to everything. Brought back a lot of bad memories. But hopefully they'll get something worked out here and we don't have to worry about it next year.
So between us, we won't let Omar know about this, but if Gary Bettman decides to go with replacement players next year, you in?
I couldn't do that, no. Couldn't do that.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
My pleasure, thanks.
So he's a hockey fan, but he's a bigger Union guy than he is a hockey fan. But he was, of course, such a big part of the baseball labor situation when it was foremost in everybody's mind, and looking on from afar at the hockey situation. Here's Michael Hinckley getting a chance to swing the bat. Braden Looper is the new Met pitcher, and we just saw Kaz Matsui make a pretty nice charging play from second to base on that slow bouncer by Brian Schneider.
He really did. He's getting, again, it's experiencing everything he can in spring training right now. I expect to see Matsui get to play an awful lot of games this spring. A lot of time veteran players kind of mix and match a little bit early, but I think you'll see Matsui and Reyes playing together quite a bit because Willie Randolph understands the need to form that relationship for the two guys up the middle.
Well, that play there was very difficult for Matsui because his back was to first base. Normally, as a shortstop, you're facing first base. You've got everything going with your momentum towards first base. His momentum was going towards Willie Randolph over there in the third base dugout, still able to make a perfect throw and make a nice play.
One out, nobody on, no score. Here in the bottom of the third on a beautiful day in Viera, Florida. The spring training opener for the Washington Nationals and for the New York Mets for that matter. And Braden Looper, the closer for the Mets after having a successful run with the Florida Marlins. And we heard Omar Minaya in his interview with Sam talking about the bullpen and whether or not that needs to be addressed. Steve, I know you have some thoughts about that Met bullpen and how important it's going to be to their success this year.
Well, first, interesting, you know, a lot of people say, why are you pitching your closer in the third inning of the game? And I think the reason you do it is that a lot of times later in the game, managers take the veteran players out. You get a lot of young kids, and better for your closer to face major league hitters. Now, maybe not Michael Hinckley, right. but I think that Willie Randolph this year, he's really going to make his money, not by writing up the lineup every day, but by the decisions he's going to have to make in the 6th and 7th inning of a game. They're not a team that's going to outslug you, so they're going to, and they have good starting pitching, so they're going to be in most games, and they're going to be playing close games. And what's going to happen is that when Glavine and Pedro Martinez come up to hit in the 7th inning, does he let them hit in the 6th inning, the 7th? Does he let them hit, knowing that they can go back out there? And Pedro has a history of tiring later in games and not having the same stuff. Or does he go to somebody he doesn't trust very much in that bullpen to let that guy try to hold the game and give him a chance to win it? And I think that is going to be the toughest decision, and that's where Willie Randolph's going to be tested the most, managing this Mets team this year.
Do you guys buy that as a guy who, for the most part, played in the American League and then coached in the American League? Is there a learning curve for him adjusting to the National League style of play?
I don't know that there's going to be that much of a learning curve. Sure, there will be learning a lot of bunt defense and making sure guys are in the perfect position, but he's surrounded himself with enough good people on that bench over there from a coaching standpoint where they can handle it.
Looks like a second baseman to me. Kaz Matsui with another good play. 2 in the inning, and the Nationals are done here in the bottom of the third. Everybody getting used to one another, but Willie Randolph has to like what he has seen so far here today. Matsui, a couple of sharp plays this inning. We're scoreless through 3. And welcome back to Viera, Florida, along with Steve Phillips, Jeff Brantley, and Sam Ryan. I'm Dan Shulman. This is our opening spring training game here, and so many big scoring lines coming out of last season, the eventful, for lack of a better term, off season, and then heading into 2005. Of course, like it or not, steroids is one of those issues that dominated the headlines. Barry Bonds chasing history, but that all gets intertwined with the steroid story, going back to the playoffs of last year when the Red Sox winning and the Yankee-Red Sox rivalry in the off season, which seems almost as strong, guys, as it is during the season. Yeah, right. And then that, of course, will be the Major League regular season opener on the ESPN Sunday night game of the week. Jeff, as you look forward to the 2005 season, or maybe looking back as well, what's the dominant baseball headline right now?
Well, I think it's definitely the steroid issue and what that's done to numbers, whether they should count or whether there should be an asterisk beside certain players' names. And the bottom line is, if you can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that a player has taken steroids, regardless, it's rocking up the middle. Beltran, he can hit from both sides, can't he, fellas?
Yes, he can.
The issue for me is that if you can't absolutely prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that one gentleman or another is tested positive for using steroids, then how do you ever decide whether you're going to make an asterisk there? You keep the rules are the rules. We never changed anything back in the late 70s, early 80s when we had the cocaine issue. We never talked about anything before that time about cheating in baseball or those types of things. If you can't prove it, there's nothing you can do about it.
So you're saying close the book on what has happened, clean slate for everybody here on in, with what we think, Steve, is a better drug policy?
Well, it's a much better drug policy. I think that the biggest difference between the drug policy of 2004 and the drug policy of 2005 is the fact that first-time offenders get punished. I think that is the key thing.
Totally agree.
Right? Absolutely. I mean, it changes everything because
and publicly, too, so their names will come out.
That's the thing, because the punishment's not a 10-day suspension without pay. That's not a punishment to most of these players. The punishment will be the fact that they're going to be outed, and the embarrassment from the fans, not really among their teammates. I think it's more about the fans. I think that no people have watched the way Giambi and Bonds have been treated and accepted with everything that's happened. I think that players don't want to go through that because that is not going to be comfortable. Giambi going into the season this year in New York, that's a Herculean effort for him to overcome what will be significant pressure. It's tough enough to play in New York. He's made it much tougher on himself.
Well, up until really the last 3 years of Major League Baseball, we haven't had any testing. Any of the testing that we have had has been absolutely bogus. I mean, they're not going to say, well, this guy did this or this guy did that, because they're trying to protect the name of the game. But the issue for me now that I see is we have testing. There are guys that if they don't pass, their names are going to be on the headlines. And they will take the brunt of the blow for what has been going on over the last 3 or 4 years, or what people have perceived has been going on.
We do know that players can be tested randomly. We do know they can be tested multiple times. We do know they can be tested in the offseason. All of those things are good as you take a look at the new steroid policy. Now, one thing that's important, though, Steve, to mention is that something like human growth hormone, even though you're not allowed to use it, there's no current test available to test for it because you need a blood test for that. And right now, all that Baseball and the Players Association have agreed to is urinalysis, so they can't test for human growth hormone. So I guess my question is, yes, this policy is better, but does it still have some holes in it?
Well, I mean, we have to look at the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to get a level playing field where everybody's clean. And I think that we're headed in the right direction. It's not perfect. And the reality is, even when we do get an acceptable test for human growth hormone, we're still not, there's still going to be that 1 or 2 guys who find a way to skirt the system, but we're seeing a change in body types. We don't know, it doesn't mean everybody whose body's changed has used steroids or human growth hormone or whatever else, but we're starting to see a change in that. So I think we're headed in the right direction. The problem, the commissioner's office only wants to look ahead. They say there's a system in place that's going to get better, and they keep getting pulled into the past. The Canseco book, Belko, Kevin Towers, the general manager for the Padres, comments about Ken Caminiti, keep bringing up things from the past, and I don't think we should resist at least looking back and continuing to figure out what happened and why it happened so that we can better prepare where we go in the future.
Well, we have to learn from your mistakes. That's human nature. When you don't test, the only reason that anything ever came out about cocaine abuse from guys back in the late 70s is because they got busted off the field. Nobody got caught in the game. That's the whole reason. Now that we've got testing in season and during the off season, I think that makes a lot of difference. I think that is a huge deterrent for anybody, regardless of whether they're doing steroids or something else.
Yep.
You don't want to get caught doing anything.
Right, I've got a question for each of you, and Steve, as a former GM, let me ask you about one of your counterparts said. Kevin Towers, the GM of the Padres, coming out and saying, you know, now that I look back on things, and I guess I had a premonition. If you kind of thought about it, you could see, and he's referring to the late Ken Caminiti, of course. What did you think about Towers' comments relating to how he now looks back at Ken Caminiti's career?
Well, it's interesting. I think as a former general manager, I had suspicions of players on my team, and I had suspicions about players on the other team. But we knew there was no system to address it. I mean, the issue is you go to your player, you confront him, say, I think you might be using steroids. He says, no, I'm not. You say, well, I really think you're using steroids. He says, no, I'm not. You say, well, I really, he says, what, you think I'm a liar? And then you're going to say to that player, like, go out there and win me a ball game right now. I mean, come on, I'm with you all the way. It was, and even if the player said yes, you didn't have a system or structure to be able to address it, or where would you go with it? So Kevin Towers, I think he's being real hard on himself right now, and I think that, but I think it's good that he's talking about it because, you know, it was one that you know, we wanted addressed, but there really wasn't a system to be able to do it.
Jason Phillips with a line drive base hit into right field. Beltran will come around to score. Mitkevich stops at second, and the Mets take a 1-0 lead.
Baseball players are no different than any other athlete or any other businessman. You're always looking for an edge. You're always looking for a way to drive a run in or drive a ball into the gap or be better than the next guy that sits with you, because you know that your monetary value as a player or as a businessman will rise if you can take that edge and make it successful. Without testing, you're allowed to do whatever you want. Now that we've started to move in that direction, we're going to rein in a lot of the guys that are doing things that may be construed as cheating.
David Wright sends a fly ball into right center field. Chavez setting up underneath it. Mitkevich is going to tag at second. And at the third, advancing the base on the fly ball by Wright. Well, Jeff, let me ask you, I don't know how well you know Jose Canseco or how much of the book you have read, but what are your thoughts on the book and its implications?
Well, I think at this point you've heard a lot of guys talk about, well, I'm going to sue Jose Canseco. I'm going to sue him because he said that I used steroids, or that he shot me up, or he gave me pills, or whatever it may be. I'll be waiting on that a long time before this ever goes to court from any of those players. Because not only can you not prove that you did it, you can't prove that you didn't do it.
Yeah, you're not saying it's because they did it. You're just saying that you can't prove one way or the other.
Can't prove one way or the other. Pandora's box is wide open.
That's the thing.
But yet nobody knows who's in it.
Right. But I think everybody knows enough people are in it that they best leave it close.
Right.
Because if it starts getting into the court and it turns into a he said, you get the feeling that a lot more names are going to come out. And a lot of the players, and again, as you said, a lot of guys are going to show up 20 pounds lighter this year. A lot of guys showed up 20 pounds lighter last year. And, you look at them and say, should I be suspicious, or is it just, guy decided to lose weight?
Where this issue will be settled is 15 and 20 years from now, when the health of those players that have used steroids deteriorates so rapidly, and we start to see deaths where we think, oh my gosh, what happened to this guy, or what happened to that guy? That's when we'll know what really was actually happening back in the 90s and the early 2000s.
First and third, one out. And the 2-1 pitch grounded back to the mound. Got a chance for two, and they won't get anybody. Hinckley's throws a little bit low, and Viera wasn't quite at the bag in time, and instead of turning what could have been an inning-ending double play, the Mets get another run.
Now, this is the one thing that you work on spring training every single day, even on the days that you play your games. Pitchers' fielding position, PFPs, over and over and over again. Right there, Hinckley just didn't get his feet set. He tried to hurry too much. On a ball that's hit right back to you, all you got to do is set your feet, make a good throw, chest high to second base. You got automatic double play. You're in the dugout.
Now, most every time he'll make that play, but he's in his first major league experience in front of a sold-out crowd. He's a little excited, trying to do a little too much, a little too quickly.
So the Mets with a couple of runs in here in the top of the fourth, and 2 on with only 1 out. Eric Valent coming up for the second time.
And in this situation, especially with a young pitcher, you start seeing runs across the board. You start to try to do things that you're not capable of doing. You start to try to throw the ball a little bit harder. You start to try to make your breaking ball that much better. And what ends up happening is you end up hurting yourself, because then you have no run on the ball and your breaking ball just hangs. And then they end up having to come out there and take you out of the ball game, which is the last thing you want.
Do you remember your spring training debut?
I remember.
Well, let's hear it.
Like let's hear it. Well,
well, when you try to spit and nothing comes out, you know you're in trouble.
So you could tell us some story about striking out this guy and that guy. We'd have trouble verifying it.
That's exactly right. We don't know.
Yeah, it's spring training. Nobody keeps records.
Look, I can honestly tell you that every ball game that I have ever been in, closing or non-closing situations, was very, very anxious for me.
Well, you made everybody else comfortable.
Up high, 2 balls and a strike. I think they're looking down to the mat a little bit as if he didn't like his landing spot. And this is one of those innings. Probably feels to him like he's been out there about a month and a half right now.
I don't know. I don't know if I made Al Rosen real comfortable when I first came to the big leagues. I can remember stories of him throwing ashtrays against the wall when I was pitching against the Dodgers. He wanted to beat him so bad. It's not good for your closer when you come out and you walk the first 3 guys when you're playing the Dodgers. And you're in San Francisco. That didn't work too good.
We were talking about Kevin Towers and his comments about Caminiti, where possibly he knew what was going on. And as a general manager, I wanted a level playing field. And most general managers, we wanted a level playing field that was clean. That was our number one thing. That's what we wanted. The second thing we wanted was a level playing field. And we couldn't have it clean. We wanted it level. And if I thought guys in other teams were using steroids, it was awfully tough on me to go to my clubhouse, start looking in the toiletry kits, looking in the shoe boxes, trying to figure out who was doing what, because I needed to compete. And that's the truth of it, and I'm not proud of that necessarily, but the reality was I wasn't going to go looking through my clubhouse, because if other guys were doing it, I wasn't going to support my guys doing it, but I wanted to try to win. And so what I just thought our responsibility was as an organization was to try to educate our players on what steroids can do to you. Why do people take them, and what are the long-term ramifications for both those and over-the-counter supplements and other things that people are using to enhance their performance. That's what we thought was the best way to go. Let's educate everybody so they can then make that decision.
Well, I think that's got to be the most disturbing thing, too, for all the 18-year-old high school athletes who are reading
that
books.
Is my biggest issue.
It's not just that Jose Canseco, whether you believe him or not, he has said it. It's not just that he has said, hey, I use steroids and he used steroids and he used steroids. And here's one of the quotes from Canseco's book where he says, the hard part is finding an elite player who hasn't used steroids. But it's not just all the people whose names he threw into the book. It's that he's also projected it into the future, saying, you know what? If people know what they're doing and use it in a controlled way, everybody should be doing it and everybody will be doing it, and it'll make the game more entertaining. And you know what? There are a lot of impressionable 17 and 18-year-olds out there.
Well, you know what? I really have strong feelings about this, that Major League Baseball, the commissioner's office and the union ought to join hands and start to be proactive instead of reactive and take this thing and let's use it to educate kids, use the star players, use Jason Giambi, you know, who's kind of been the poster boy for this thing. Let him get out there and start to teach kids about what was wrong about using steroids, and let's see if we can't try to put a dent into this thing.
Joe McEwing coming up as a pinch hitter for Braden Looper, who went an inning in his first appearance of the spring. McEwing, of course, a guy who plays just about every position for the New York Mets.
Well, I'll tell you a very quick story. Coaching the Clinton High School baseball team right now, being an assistant coach, going into a restroom and watching the opposition clear out and finding a vial in the back of the restroom that had not been opened yet, but the vial was on the top of the toiletry seat.
That happened to you this year?
This happened to me about just a couple of days ago.
Really?
A bottle of steroids.
Now, a bottle of steroids. Now, in my mind, if it has gotten to that level, down to the high school level, you know this is not something that is built for you through body chemistry. This is something that is black market. And in my mind, if it's gotten to that level, to the high school level, we're dealing with a problem that is way beyond what we see out here on this baseball field. I don't care what Bonds does. I don't care what Canseco does. I don't care what any of these guys do. They're getting paid. But when you start talking about children, and when you're 16 and 17 years old, you may think you know everything in the world. You are still a child.
Well, that's the scary part of it. And all baseball can do, as you say, if they really embrace it, Steve, and I'm not sure they've really embraced it to the level they can, but if they really come out jointly, as you say, between the players and owners and make a statement, not just for the 750 players who are playing Major League Ball right now, but for the minor leaguers, the college kids, the high school kids. I mean, isn't it time to take a stand and do what's right?
They're illegal.
Yeah. They're illegal, but it's, I mean, look, there's a lot of things kids are doing that are illegal, but we need to, I mean, I just think that baseball as a whole could make such a big difference right now in addressing this problem. Now, look, we're a little bit behind it because we're reacting, but so what? Let's take the criticism that the only reason they're doing it is because, you know, everything came out in Belko and what's happened with it. That's okay too, but join hands, go out there together and fix this thing so that the kids don't deal with the same problem.
3-1 is popped up into shallow left center field. Coming in Wilkerson, he'll make the play. Reyes retired and the inning is over, but the Mets do get a couple to take a 2-0 lead going to the bottom of the fourth. Bottom of the fourth, Mets leading the Nationals 2-0 here on a beautiful day in Viera, Florida. Dan Shulman, Steve Phillips, Jeff Brantley, Sam Ryan, and pleased to be joined now by the manager of the Washington Nationals, Frank Robinson. And Frank, I know everybody's optimistic on the first day of spring. Everybody's happy, but after what you guys went through the last couple of years in Montreal, you've got to be thrilled with being the Washington Nationals right now.
Well, it's a good feeling. There's no doubt about that, and we are very anxious and excited about the upcoming season and the excitement that we hear that's back in D.C. about this ball club.
You know, Frank, as we see Christian Guzman going to hit right now, you know, the organization made some major acquisitions this offseason. What is it that you wanted Jim Bowden to do as he took the helm here with the Nationals and trying to improve this club?
Well, I wanted to get the holes that we had plugged as soon as we possibly could, but I also wanted the Jim to focus on some type of a veteran-type, experience-type of individuals coming into this ball club. We just felt like we were a little too young last year, and we wanted some type of veteran leadership.
Well, Frank, I know that there have been numerous trips that your club has taken to Puerto Rico, and I hear that that's going to be your vacation spot this winter.
No way. That's like a mailman taking a hike on his day off. Thank you.
Well, in terms of jobs that are up for grabs, Frank, what are you really looking to determine this spring?
Not much. Most of it's in the pitching staff. Other than that, what you saw here to start the lineup, the game today, was basically what you see opening day, barring any injuries.
Well, Frank, you know, you've made some of these acquisitions, and I think you've added some depth and length to your offense, and certainly I think put a pretty fine defensive team on the field. But does the key to this team really boil down to that pitching staff and the long-term health of your pitchers?
Oh, absolutely. As Brantley knows up there, that this game starts with pitching, and it ends with pitching. And if you play good defense behind that pitcher, they have a pretty good chance of keeping you in the ball game every day.
Chad Cordero, just coming out of college for you guys, pitched pretty well last year. Is he going to be the guy that you feel like may be given the first shot to close out the ball games for you?
He will be the guy, if you want to call it a chance to be the closer this year. He'll probably get the first shot and the first chance. And he'll probably guy early in the season. I would certainly use a little bit more than some of the other guys, but it looked like it's going to be a closer by committee this year to take some of the load off the young arms you have down there.
Well, he seems almost unrattled, and I can remember watching him play in the College World Series not too long ago, and even standing on a big league mound, he still seems to have that same mentality, filling up the strike zone. And for you, I know it's very important for you that your pitchers throw strikes right off the bat.
Oh, even today. My nerves on edge. I've been biting my tongue and biting my nails here not to say anything. I think it revolves around it. Like you say, we're going to have a good defensive ball club behind this pitching staff. We want them to make the hitters put the ball in play.
Frank, best of luck this season. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Frank.
Frank Robinson, Hall of Famer, the manager of the Washington Nationals. 22 games per year in Puerto Rico and 2 or 3 separate road trips. And I remember talking to Brian Schneider last year, their player rep and their outstanding defensive catcher, and saying, it's the kind of thing that they would feel pretty good, but then they'd hit that wall in June, and then they'd hit another one in July, and they'd hit another one in August, and they never got to unpack, and they feel it cost them 6, 8, 10 wins in the standings.
You have to give Frank Robinson an awful lot of credit, because baseball players sometimes like to whine and feel sorry for themselves, and the reality was, within the National League, nobody in that National League was feeling sorry for them, so he couldn't let them feel sorry for themselves, and he deserves an awful lot of credit keeping that thing together, and not only getting them folks about playing baseball and how to win, but also how to become professionals. He's done a great job there.
Jamie Carroll has come in as a pinch runner for Jose Vidro at first after Vidro's base hit to right center. This is Guillen, who hits a rocket to right center field, and Guillen has hit it out. The first Washington National home run, albeit in the spring, belongs to Jose Guillen as the Nationals have tied it up at 2. Put a charge in that ball.
He can do that. He's a strong young man. An awful lot of power and thunder in that bat.
And adjusting the hand-operated scoreboard here at Space Coast Stadium as the Nationals have tied it up. Let's take another look at the swing.
The ball kind of down and away a little bit. He just stayed right on that. That's a strong man being able to drive that ball out to right center field right there. Jim Bowden talks about him, and Jim Bowden is the general manager of the Cincinnati Reds, had Jose Guillen as a player there, and then he went out to free agency after a big year, and he was quick to move to bring him back, and somewhat dismisses the issues with him, the anger issues and everything else.
He faced the same thing when he was in Cincinnati with him.
He did. Jim Bowden knows with a smaller payroll, he's willing to be the Oakland Raiders of Major League Baseball. He's willing to take some of the misfits, and if they have talent, he's going to find a way to put them on a team and be productive. And he looked at it saying 30 home runs and 100 RBIs for $3.7 million is a pretty good bargain in the game today, considering other guys are getting 12 to 17 million.
Yep. Well, I can take a guy's temper tantrums and throw in his helmet, even if he's throwing it at me, as long as he can come out and he wants to play.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest key for Jose Guillen is the fact that he wants to play. He wants to play every day. He wants to play every AB, and sometimes you just can't fault the guy for that.
2 outs, nobody on. Frank Robinson still got the headset on as we take a shot of him. Guillen has tied it up at 2 here in the bottom of the 4th. The home run given up by Aaron Heilman, who just came into the game this inning for the New York Mets, their 3rd pitcher of the game, as Vinny Castilla pops one back. Jeff, what are your thoughts on Heilman and his possibilities for the Mets this year?
Well, I liked Heilman last year. He got a little bit of time in the big leagues. The biggest key for him is learning that he's got to change his pitching style a little bit once he gets here. I think if he can learn to pitch backwards, throw breaking balls for strikes, change-ups for strikes early, and then use that tailing fastball in on these right-handed hitters or away from the left-handed hitters, he can be a very successful pitcher. He's got all of the pitches. It's just a matter of him learning how to be successful at this level.
Well, we saw him after the home run go to the change-up a little bit and be able to get some swings and misses. And that's what he has to do. The problem, when we drafted Aaron Heilman, when I was the general manager for the Mets, we drafted him out of Notre Dame University, had great success at the college level, a lot of interest in him. We drafted him as a senior, and he came in. He got off to a pretty good start, but he ran into a problem where he had difficulty commanding his fastball. And if a pitcher can't throw strikes with his fastball, he can't pitch. Right, JB?
You got that right.
Breaking ball grounded down to first. Mankiewicz to a knee to make the play, and underhands it to Heilman covering to end the inning. But the Nationals get a couple as Jose Guillen drives one out to right center field, a 2-run shot. Here we're all tied up at 2. Here in Viera, Florida. And Kaz Matsui getting his 3rd at bat of the afternoon and facing a new pitcher for Washington. Tall right-hander, and I do mean tall right-hander, John Roush at 6'11", the tallest player in Major League history, next to the White Sox. Frank Robinson has started to make some changes with his position players as well. And this being the first game of the spring, you know, it's death, taxes, and somebody's getting in the game whose number isn't on the roster. So as soon as we figure out who number 75 catching is, we'll let you know. Got 100 guys listed on this roster, and some guy who's not on there makes it into the game.
You talk about John Roush pitching in Chicago. A big thing for him pitching over there in the American League side. He threw way too many breaking balls. He didn't challenge the hitters enough, and circumstances led him to being behind in the count most of the time, and that's why he got hit. This kid's got great tilt on the ball. He's throwing the ball, it looks like, out of the clouds down to the catcher, which gives him a tremendous advantage. It's very hard to square a ball when it's coming in from that angle. But the big key for him is throwing the ball over the plate. He has good stuff. Pitching for a manager like Frank Robinson, that's what we talked about.
Matsui hits the 0-2 to deep left center field, and it is dropped out there by Andy Chavez. Rounding second, falling down is Matsui. And now he scampers back to second base. So that was an adventure all the way around.
Matsui's not a real big guy, but he has some strength. Takes that ball, that high fastball, which, you know, left-handers tend to be low ball hitters. He takes that high fastball, drives it pretty well to left center field. And then he's allergic to the shortstop side of second base now because he's a second base.
Right.
When you look at Matsui's swing, it's very similar to some of the other Oriental players that we've had come over here. It's very flat, seems to be able to get to the ball with some pretty good consistency and not strike out that much.
He scored an error on Chavez. Now Beltran comes up and pops one out of play. We're starting to solve some of the mysteries here for the Nationals. Keith Osick is catching. Jamie Carroll stayed at the game at second base. Ian Desmond is now at short, and Brendan Harris is at third.
Now, the reason Osick has a 75 on the back of his jersey is he's been around about 75 years.
Yes. He has, but he's been around long enough you ought to get a name on the back of that shirt, don't you think?
Beltran has struck out and singled and scored. In his first live action as a Met. Pop-up really into shallow right. And Beltran is retired. Let me ask both of you guys. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but Beltran to come into New York. Everybody knows, or everybody who's been around him knows, he's soft-spoken, and he played in a small market in Kansas City, but then he was unbelievable with Houston, especially in the playoffs. I'm interested in both of your opinions. How do you think he's going to adjust to everything that is involved with playing in New York?
Well, I think that part of it is going to be able to handle the interview side of New York. And as you know, Steve, regardless of how the team does on a given day, they're going to come to you and ask you how you felt, what's going on. You're going to have to learn how to handle that and when to push it away and how to separate that from what you do on the field. But when you talk about a guy being able to handle the pressure of playing in a limelight situation, he couldn't have done it any better during the playoffs last year.
No, there's no question. Playing in New York is a tough thing. And when you're making $17 million, the expectation is that you are the face and voice of the organization. But not only that, it is actually not only your expectation, it is the responsibility of that player. He is a quiet, somewhat unassuming guy. He doesn't want to be the focal point of the team. For the Mets to maximize their investment, they need him to play baseball and to be successful on the field. And what they need to do is insulate him and protect him so that he doesn't feel like he has to be that go-to guy every time for the media, because it's not his style, and he has to continue to focus on playing He's a young guy at 27 years old who's continuing to grow and improve in his career. He needs to keep worrying about playing baseball. That's why having Pedro Martinez around, Mike Piazza around, you've got some marquee sex appeal in some of the players that will allow him maybe to just focus on playing the game.
Well, that's the thing, and you hit the nail on the head with that, Steve, talking about a guy like Glavine, Pedro Martinez, who sometimes will or won't talk to the media, but the guy that you've got there that I think gives him supreme insulation is Mike Piazza, and he'll do the same thing for David Wright.
Phillips lines one to left. Look out, it's over the head of Wilkerson and all the way to the wall, and a run will come in to score. And Phillips into second as Frank Robinson cannot be pleased with the Nationals' outfield defense here this inning.
Well, this is one of the reasons why Frank Robinson went to Jim Bowe, the general manager, and said, give me some veteran players, because you know, young players just have to learn. You learn by your mistakes in baseball. You make every one of them once, and then you hope you don't have to do it again. And I think that's what Frank has seen.
As you can see, that's now Wilkerson, another one of the many changes. They changed 7 players here this half inning. That's Jeffrey Hammonds out there in left field, trying to stick as an extra outfielder. At one point, Steve, one of the maybe the most highly thought of young player coming into the game, just has never been able to reach his potential.
No, Jeffrey has underachieved for the most part from the expectations in his career. And, you know, in this game, JB, expectations can kill you sometimes because, you know, if people start saying, well, he reminds me of this player and that player, and then you get a label that you have to live up to, it's awfully tough to do sometimes.
Well, potential in my mind is what somebody else thinks that you can do. Guts and determination decide on what you can do. And if you don't work at this game every single day, you're going to bounce around, and people will continue to remember that potential because he can hit the ball out of the ballpark. But if you want to play in the big leagues and you want to be consistent and you want to do well, you got to work at it. And you've got to change with the times, and I don't know that he's ever done that.
Now we have David Wright here at the plate for the Mets. We talk about potential. I mean, very highly thought of in the Mets organization and really around baseball. And when I was general manager, everybody was calling me trying to get David Wright. This young guy has good feet on defense. He has a great stroke at the plate. He has power, the ability to use the whole field, but he also has that twinkle in his eye that star players have, an awful lot of charisma.
Fouls it off to the right side. A run in to make it 3-2 for the Mets. We just got a shot again of Frank Robinson, the manager of the Nationals. Still got the headset on. Frank, you still listening to us?
Of course.
You've got a job to do.
Hey, chime in, Frank, whenever you want.
Trying to gain some knowledge.
How we doing so far? It's spring training for us too, you know.
So far, so good. You're right on the wavelength with me.
But you know what? You got to tell us when you change 7 guys in 1 inning. You're killing us up here.
Tell us who's playing where.
I'll be glad to. Got them all now?
I think so. Good. Is that still Andy in center field?
Yes, it is.
All right. And that's still Nick at first base.
Yes.
And everybody else has changed.
Right.
Okay. What's coming up next inning? Give me a head start.
Escobar will be in center, and Blanco will be at first base.
All right. Now we're talking.
And Varga will hit for the pitcher.
Where are you going to dinner tonight, Frank?
Well, it depends on how we finish out this game. Right now, I don't feel like eating.
Even in spring training, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you put the uniform on, you don't want to look sloppy.
A little bit sloppy in the outfield as we've seen this inning. A 3-2 game. The Nationals in front of a big crowd here at Space Coast Stadium. I know you couldn't see from where you were sitting, Frank. It took about 4 innings for everybody to get into the park. 1 road feeding into the stadium, and a lot of people trying to get to this game here today.
Well, you know, I'll pick it up later.
All right. A liner to Chavez. Frank Robinson will take us to break. We got a 3-2 Mets lead. Spring training baseball coming back your way after this. Bottom of the 5th inning, the Nationals coming up, trailing the Mets 3-2. We're here at Space Coast Stadium, and a monument of the Space Shuttle outside the stadium, and all kinds of reminders visually around this area. We're pretty close to the Kennedy Space Center here on the east coast of Florida, up near Melbourne, Florida. We're just a little bit inland in a town called Viera. As Nick Johnson leads it off against Aaron Heilman and takes high ball 1. Johnson projected to be the first baseman for the Washington Nationals this year. Battled some injuries last year, back trouble, broke a cheekbone.
Now, I think he's going to play a big part on this ball club. The guy can play, he can hit. He's an excellent first baseman. We talked about Minkiewicz being able to scoop the ball at first base. This guy's in the same category. It's just a matter of being able to get him out there and playing in 150-something ball games.
Look at their lineup 1 through 8. If they can keep those guys on the field, they're going to score a lot more runs than they did as the Expos last year when they were the second worst offensive team in baseball.
I agree. I think adding the players that they did, Guzman and Castilla and Guillen, they've added great depth to this lineup. And you have Nick Johnson batting down 7th spot in your order. That's pretty good. He gets on base and he can slug a little bit. He's a big key to this team, though. They need him to step up. He needs to produce in this full season of at-bats the first time around.
And you can see the ranks for the then Montreal Expos last year. Second lowest or third lowest in the National League in all those categories. Chopper to second. Mitsui's has a busy afternoon as he hands it on to first. Johnson is retired. Let's find a little bit more about the Nationals right now. Their GM, Jim Bowden, standing by with our Sam Ryan. Sam?
He's right here, Dan. And Jim, in a unique situation with no ownership technically in place right now, how does that limit you, or does it?
Sam, it really doesn't. You know, I mean, the baseball operations department has a budget. I report directly to Tony Tavares, the president, and as long as we stay within the budget, he lets us make the baseball decisions. So the baseball op part is not affected at all by not having an owner right now.
So you came in, you made some changes. When you first assessed the team, what was the first thing you wanted to fix?
Well, we needed another bat in the middle of the lineup, and obviously went out and traded for Jose Guillen, a guy that I had in Cincinnati, a player that's capable of hitting 30 home runs and driving in 100 runs, and you could see his power today when he went the other way. He's a really good young hitter that's just developing.
But Jose is the guy who's known to wear his emotions on his sleeve. How much of a risk are you taking with him?
I don't think there's much risk at all. I mean, I know him very well, and I think when he gets in trouble sometimes it's because he cares too much. He wants to play in every game. He wants the game to be played right. And you know what? I give him a lot of credit because he went through anger management on his own. The club didn't make him go. The Angels didn't make him go. His agent didn't make him go. He went on his own to try to make himself better, and I think it's really had a positive effect on him.
Esteban Loaiza goes tomorrow for you. What does he show you?
Well, Esteban Loaiza, we're hoping, gets back to the form he was a year ago, year before last, when he won 20 games and started the All-Star game. He's got a lot of potential. Hopefully he'll do it here.
Okay, Jim, thanks for your time.
That's it. Thanks so much.
Now the Nationals swing the bats pretty well when the GM is doing an interview. That's Keith Osick lining one over the left field wall for a home run to tie this game at 3.
Nothing better for a guy fighting to make the team, hitting a home run in front of the GM.
I could have told him not to throw him down and in. I faced him. And
where were you when he needed
out of here forever.
Here's Carlos Baerga. After a couple of years with the Diamondbacks, of course, best known for his all-star years with the Indians in the 90s when he was the best offensive second baseman around. I mean, this guy could really swing the bat. And even 2 years ago had a great year as a pinch hitter for Arizona. Walked in today, smile on his face as always, happy to be here. And how much game has he got left, guys? You know.
Well, you know what? He's obviously on the back end of his career. He's fighting for one of those bench roles, but you know, he's a good gamer, and he's a good guy in the team. I think he's a good veteran to have around. And coming off the bench, Frank Robinson talked. You know, if young kids coming off the bench is not really what you want to do putting a team together. For your roles on the club, you want to have the Lenny Harris type guy, the veteran hitter. It's not easy to sit for 7 or 8 innings and then go in and pinch hit. You have to know what to look for, how to prepare yourself, and how to approach that at bat. And veterans are better suited for it, and I think that's what Baerga's fighting for.
All right, let me spin with you, Steve, into the next guy, because somebody you're familiar with, Alex Escobar, stepping in now.
Former phenom prospect with the Mets, and I actually, Jim Bowden down below, I actually had a deal in place with him to acquire Barry Larkin at one point with Escobar in the deal.
It's all coming together, right? It's all we're tying up all the loose ends here today. Tied at 3 through 5 here in Viera. Tied at 3 on a beautiful day down here in Viera, Florida. Dan Shulman, Steve Phillips, Jeff Brantley, and Sam Ryan with you. The first of 13 spring training telecasts on ESPN over the next 4 or 5 weeks. I'll get you set for the real deal opening day in early April. And pleased to be joined right now by the new manager of the New York Mets, Willie Randolph. Willie, I think everybody in baseball congratulates you. I think a lot of people feel this has been a long time in coming. How are things going so far?
Oh, things going great. A nice camp going. The guys are busting their butts every day, so I'm feeling good, real good right now.
No, Willie, one of the things that came out of camp early was you're instituting some rules for the guys. No facial hair, you know, no goatees. I think you can have mustaches, headphones in the clubhouse with the music. What's your purpose? Those obviously aren't things to impact the playing on the field, but what's your purpose for putting those things in place?
Well, more than anything, I think we're in a working environment, especially in spring training, where you got a lot of different guys trying to make the team, and I think that the focus should be on baseball. I enjoy music and having a good time, but I think you have to respect each other's space. There's small quarters in there, and we just want to focus on some discipline and just focusing on baseball.
I think the key word there is discipline. That's how you win ball games.
Yeah.
You've got guys that are on this ball club that if discipline was put in order in the past, things may have been a lot different than where they are right now.
Yeah, well, I didn't know a lot about what happened when I wasn't here, but I just know what I know as far as being around winning ball clubs and respect for each other in the clubhouse and the dugout. And, it's just standards that I believe in. It's not, I'm not a big rules guy, but I just think it's important for guys to have a certain structure and a certain attitude when they come to the ballpark.
But Willie, when you played the game, everything was business when you stepped on the field. It wasn't a lot about going over and talking to the guys on the other side of the field and shaking hands and, hey, how you doing?
Not much fraternizing.
No, I mean, and I think that's the way the game should be played.
Yes.
And to see a manager come in and institutionalize this, it can't do anything but help your ball club.
Yeah, well, this is it's not war, of course, but you're out there competing. You want to make sure that you're concentrating on your job and being there for your teammates. So there's nothing wrong with saying how you're doing, but you're trying to beat me, I'm trying to beat you. So I was taught that way, and it might sound a little bit hard, but it's a little old school baseball, and I think that's good.
Well, I guess we're kind of breaching that right now, Willie. If you want to say how you doing, Frank Robinson still has a headset on. We interviewed him a couple of innings ago, and he hasn't taken the headset off yet. You got anything to say to Frank?
Oh, well, no, not really. I'm not trying to beat him today, but I have tremendous respect for Frank. He's like a mentor to me, really. And if it was for his struggles and the people before him, I wouldn't be here today.
Right, Willie, one of the keys to your success this year is going to be what happens up the middle with your defense, and the transition with Matsui moving from shortstop to second base, and Jose Reyes moving back to shortstop. What can you tell us about what you've seen so far, and what role do you think you're going to play in making sure that transition's a positive one?
Well, Kaz has looked real nice at second base so far. If you've taken a bunch of infielders and put them in a row there and picked out your second baseman, for some reason Kaz looks like one. He just has a great athletic body, and he moves real well over there. I know he played shortstop for a lot of years, but right now Manny Actor and I, and along with Sandy Sr., are doing as much as we can to help him get acclimated to the position. He's gotten his work in. As you know, he's a hard worker, and I'm going to help out a little bit. I know a little bit about the position, I guess.
A little bit, yeah.
But right now, we're just trying to let him get his feet wet and just kind of gradually get to the position.
Willie, thanks for the time. Good luck this year.
All right, thanks guys.
Appreciate Willie Randolph, the manager of the Mets. We'll be back.
MLB 2006. Nothing is more true to the game. Rated E for everyone.
Felix Heredia. Welcome back to Space Coast Stadium here in Viera, Florida. Dan Shulman, Steve Phillips, Jeff Brantley, and Sam Ryan with you. Hope you're enjoying this spring training telecast as the Nationals come up at a 3-3 tie, bottom of the 6th. And the third base, Miguel Cairo. Chris Woodward is at short right now for the Mets, and Danny Garcia has taken over at second base. And a very familiar face, the big cat, Andres Galarraga, 43 years old. Trying to stick as an extra guy, and it looks like he will. Kind of a platoon first baseman, pinch hitter type. With the Mets, Felix Heredia is now in the game pitching for New York. So all of a sudden the Mets have added guys like Woodward and Cairo and Galarraga. They got a whole different looking bench than they had last year.
Well, we talked about Beltran and Pedro Martinez, but some of the best moves Omar Minaya and his staff made were some of the bench players they brought in. Miguel Cairo is a terrific player for this team, a guy that could fill in on a given day or fill in for 2 weeks and get the job done and play multiple positions. And Chris Woodward's a guy they're looking at certainly, but Andres Galarraga, to be able to balance Doug Mickavich at first base might be a nice fit, because not only for what he could do on the field, but the presence he brings to the clubhouse. I mean, I was covering a game last year when the Anaheim Angels brought him up in September, and everybody in the clubhouse flocked to Andres Galarraga. I flocked to Andres Galarraga just to see him because, again, battling twice beaten cancer. And what a gentleman he is, and what an ambassador for the game of baseball.
Well, not only that, but he gives you a guy, even at this point in his career, you bring him in the 9th inning, he's got a chance to hit the ball out of the ballpark and either tie a ball game or give you a win.
Exactly.
399 career home runs for the big cat. Ian Desmond was the first hitter this inning, retired by Felix Heredia. Now Jamie Carroll is the batter. One of the great things about spring games, there's a lot to like about spring training baseball, but just seeing guys who have come out of the game running on the warning track, running in the outfield during the game. I mean, if you don't know where you are when you see that, you haven't been to a lot of baseball games. It's great.
This Jamie Carroll gives me a little David Eckstein look.
Yeah,
yes, he does.
Got his gear pulled up.
Yeah.
He's choked up on the bat. He's crouched over the plate. As the ball comes to the mid, he watches it all the way in.
Eckstein, of course, no longer with the Angels as Carroll draws the walk. Some pretty high-caliber shortstops moved around in the offseason, with Cabrera moving to the Angels and Renteria to Boston and Eckstein to St. Louis.
Well, no doubt, a lot of movement this offseason, and I think the Edgar Renteria move to the Boston Red Sox was a brilliant move on their part. I think that he is such a solid player, and it's not only in the numbers, it's when he does it. I mean, he seems to make plays offensively and defensively in critical situations and games. And what you like about what the Red Sox did is, I think that after you win, you can't just come back with the same team. You need to make a certain amount of change because you need to keep some hunger that's there. And certainly we've seen the Red Sox and Yankees bantering back and forth, but I think bringing in some new faces, some guys who didn't achieve that last year. And look, Renteria lost in the World Series last year. He's hungry to get a chance to go back, and I think the Red Sox made a big move bringing him in.
Termel Sledge is the batter right now. In all likelihood, a fourth outfielder for the Nationals. Had some big credentials coming up through the Expos system, a guy that they're pretty high on. Took over in right field for Jose Guillen, who hit a 2-run homer for the Nationals here today.
Steve, I think you hit it right on the money when you were talking about bringing in a guy like Renteria. This guy, not only from a defensive standpoint and solidifying that infield, but the guy can flat out drive the ball the other way, and for a right-handed hitter in that ballpark, that adds an extra dimension that you really don't have. Most of the right-handers in the Boston lineup, they're looking at the green mustard, trying to pull the ball over the wall. And this guy's not that type of hitter, and he can really disrupt a pitcher's timing when you have to switch from a guy you're trying to pitch away. You pitch him away, he's going to hit that ball in the right center field gap.
You hit balls to the triangle at Fenway. Those are triples too. And that's right up his alley, so to speak. Diving back in is Carroll.
Well, the other move is Nomar Garciaparra signing back with the Chicago Cubs, and the whole Cubs situation and what they look like, and Sammy Sosa being traded, and are the Cubs going to be better without Sammy Sosa as part of that club, JB?
Runner goes, and the pitch line through the vacated hole at short into left center, a base hit, and Carroll will stop at third on a single by Termel Sledge. Now, we mentioned Jose Guillen came out of the game when Sledge went in. Guillen homering earlier today. Now to top off his afternoon, he's with Sam Ryan. Sam?
Yeah, and the first home run of spring. This guy's excited. He's watching the game. He's moving everyone out of the way. How much fun are you having with your new team, Jose?
It's really fun, just happy to be here, and new team, a new town, a new opportunity, and hopefully, just take it through the season.
Your general manager, Jim Bowden, giving you another chance here. You know him well. He was talking about anger management classes that you voluntarily went to. Why was that important to you?
Well, I just decided to take it. It's a lot of people, some concern, last year and all the stuff happened in Anaheim. So, I just went there and see what was going on, and learn some stuff, learn how to act in some situation, when you get mad and stuff. But that was not really something I was really needed, just like, whatever's happened last year is over. I don't want to go there anymore, like talking about any of those stuff. But, I'm happy here, and hopefully good stuff's going to happen here.
What's the most important thing you've learned about yourself through it all?
Well, the type of player I am, when I'm playing the field, I'm the type of player, I'm going to give you everything I got, And that is something, I'm going to respect you, you're going to respect me. And that was a situation there when I was getting hit so many times. Last year I was getting frustrated and stuff, and that happened, and I would just get mad a few times, make a few comments, and that dropped a lot of attention to all those people there. But it's over, let's move forward, and then hopefully that not any of the stuff that happened last year can happen here anymore.
I'll have fun with the Nationals, and thank you for your time, Jose.
No problem. Thank you.
I think you've got to give the young man credit for taking the situation into his own hands. And although he says, I didn't really need it, obviously he felt he needed it or he wouldn't have done it, and good for him for addressing the issue.
And being willing to talk about it, too. I think that, so many times we let those things go by and wait for the next time for him to explode. But I agree. I think give him some credit. Frank Robinson said, look, I don't care what happened in the past. I set my rules. If he's a pro and he lives up to it, fine. If not, then I'll have to confront my own issues with him.
Miguel Cairo down at third for the Mets, by the way, committing an error on that last ground ball off the bat of Jeffrey Hammonds. Jamie Carroll came in to score, so the Nationals now lead 4-3. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe Willie Randolph recruits a couple of guys who have been with the Yankees in the last few years. Everybody gets a comfort zone, like Jim Bowden said about Jose Guillen. He knows him very well, and he's comfortable with him.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest reasons that Jim Bowden went out and made that trade, is he knows the heart of this young man, Jose Guillen, and his heart is competitive. He wants to play, and as much as we'd love to be able to say, well, we can turn this on or we can turn this off, the bottom line is when you step out onto the field, it is almost like a war issue for you. You want to beat the other guys, you want to play, you want to do everything that you possibly can to make yourself successful. And when you're taken out of a ball game, a lot of times that results in embarrassment for you. Now, is it embarrassment? Probably not. It's the way that you handle that. But if it is embarrassment, then you need to either as a manager or as a general manager face that issue and try to get it satisfied ASAP.
To me, it's one of those situations where everybody's done the right thing. Guillen has done the right thing. The Washington Nationals are by giving them another chance. But I think the Anaheim Angels did the right thing for the Anaheim Angels to make that decision.
No doubt about it.
That was the right thing to do.
Danny Garcia could not make the catch, but the umpire is signaling that the infield fly rule was in effect, so the batter is out. Brendan Harris is down at first base, and now Frank Robinson's going to come out and say, hey, that was no routine pop-up. You should not have said that the infield fly rule was in effect, and I'm not sure I can disagree with Frank. We have to take off the headset in order to go out and talk to the umpire.
I wish he'd have worn the headset out there. I want to hear this a little bit. But I think he's right. I'm not sure that was routine. Danny Garcia was not underneath that ball in any way that made it look like he had it under control.
I think sometimes in an umpire's mind, just because an infielder is close to the baseball in this type of situation, they make that call. That is not the correct call. It has to be a routine play, and obviously that was not a routine play because of the sun that we have today, a high sky, and he was moving all over the place. There was also your right fielder out at the same point that Danny Garcia was at.
Well, it's spring training for the umpires as well.
Frank Robinson working over Larry Vanover at first base right now. Even though it's only spring training, he wants to make sure the umpire knows where he stands.
Well, we've heard Frank's pretty intense about this game today.
Yeah.
He's not even thinking about dinner plans. I want to talk a little more about the Angels situation with what went on with that, because I really think that the Anaheim Angels made a statement. They were a team that all along was known for their makeup and their toughness and their character and the way they played, being team guys, not about individuals. And I think at that time and place, it took an awful lot of guts for that organization to take a guy with 27 home runs and 100 RBIs out of the lineup as they headed into the postseason.
No question.
An awful lot of guts. But the long-term impact of that for your organization, the message you send, not only to the players on your major league team, but to the players in your minor league organization, that says there used to be the Dodgers way. The Angels set the Angels way of doing things when they made that decision. I give them an awful lot of credit for it.
And at the point in time that they did that, it was crucial. Remember back to the Pittsburgh Pirates and the issue with Derek Bell. Hey, you can't let one guy be bigger than the team. You can't let the inmates run the asylum.
So second and third, two down. A couple of errors here this inning for the Mets. And the batter is Tony Blanco, who's taken over at first base. As Felix Heredia got a visit from Rick Peterson, the Met pitching coach. Heredia laboring here today. A run in for the Nationals, thanks to the Mets' lack of defense here this inning, to take a 4-3 lead, bottom of the sixth. And a chopper foul, 3-1. I think we've still got Frank Robinson. I think he's put the headset back on. Frank, if you've got the headset back on, what'd you say to Larry Vanover down at first?
Well, I can't repeat it on the air.
What was his explanation?
Well, his explanation, he said the second baseman was in control and he was able to catch the ball, in his opinion, and he couldn't worry about him tripping over himself. In his opinion, he was there to be able to catch the ball.
The rule book says it has to be a routine play, right, for them to put that in effect?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know about you. Nothing in this Florida sunshine is routine to me. No. This is a tough sky.
He was moving towards the right field line, and the ball was 5 feet on the other side out. And what part of routine does that carry?
Well,
that wasn't routine.
Jeff, that was my argument. But in Mr. Seagram's opinion, he felt like and made the decision he should have been able to catch the ball.
Inning over as the Nationals get a run. Frank, thanks again for another contribution here today. 4-3 Washington through 6. We go to the top of the 7th here at Space Coast Stadium. A 4-3 lead for the Washington Nationals over the Mets as we welcome you back up here in the booth. Dan Shulman, Steve Phillips, Jeff Brantley, and we've crammed in a 4th guy here, Barry Larkin. Looks strange to see you kind of wearing a sweatshirt and jeans. How does it feel to not be in uniform this time of year?
Actually, it feels good. My hands feel good. My back feels good. My neck feels good. My knees, everything feels good.
Mr. Larkin is now a special assistant to the GM of the Washington Nationals, who happens to be Jim Bowden, who, of course, was your GM for a long stretch in Cincinnati.
Right.
Are you comfortable with your playing days behind you? Are you ready to move to the next step?
Yeah, it was time for me. You know, I think I still can play, and I think JB over there thinks he can still pitch too.
Yeah, he's told us that all day.
We know I can't.
But it was time for me to move on, and I'm okay with that.
You know, as a player, you were known not only for what you could do on the field, but the impact and the credibility you carried in the clubhouse with your teammates. What is it that, because I think you have a unique opportunity to impact baseball in a way that we can't, and what do you want to do now to be able to do that for yourself? Where do you want to go with it?
Well, in the short term, I want to be exposed to everything that happens behind the scenes. I want to know what the general manager does. I want to know some of the requirements and responsibilities of the manager. I know I don't want to be a coach right now, but I still want to be affiliated with Major League Baseball because I love the game and I want to give back. I've been talking to Jim about some different programs that we're going to try to implement when we get up to Washington as far as getting the fans involved. And, you know, I just basically want to be an ambassador for baseball.
You know, Barry, you look back and you look at the game today, and there are not that many African-American guys in the front office. And we've talked about societal change. We've talked about racial change, all of those things. And you were a guy that, from the time that I stepped on the field with you in Cincinnati, always thought that this would be something that you would undertake when your days were done, as long as your wife let you do it. But I know your mind, and I know how you think and evaluate player talent as well as knowing the game and how it's supposed to be played. And I congratulate you for doing this, because it's not about the pay. It's not about anything that's on personal achievement level. It's about helping guys get to places that they've never been able to reach before, and I think that you can accomplish that.
Thank you. And you know, guys helped me out in my career, and you know, I'm very thankful to Pete Rose, to Buddy Bell, to Eric Davis, Davey Concepcion, Tony Perez. I can go on and on. Ronnie Oster.
They're all my favorites.
Yeah,
pretty good group, right?
Pretty good group. And you know, Ozzie Smith said something to me when I first got in the league, and he said it's all about passing on the knowledge. So you know, I'd like to do that. That's why I didn't want to step away from the game.
Well, back in 2000. I need an answer here. Back in 2000,
you know
I made a trade to bring Barry Larkin to the New York Mets, pending a 72-hour window to negotiate. And Jim Bowden was the general manager back then. And
right.
Alex Escobar, now with the Nationals, was in the trade going to the Reds at the time. And I had a 72-hour window to negotiate, and Jim Bowden, in the meantime, took advantage of my 72-hour window to sign you to an extension.
Well, Jimbo now has me on board here with the National, and he has Escobar, so he knew what he was doing back there. Back then, I think it was all about. I asked for a 3-year extension, and I don't think that was expressed to you. That was part of my thought. And I would have accepted that trade, but that wasn't part of the deal.
But you know what? Players like you should play their entire career with that team. I look back at it. It was absolutely the right thing for you to stay with the Cincinnati Reds. It is part of your legacy and who you are as a player. I think it was absolutely the right thing to do.
I agree with that.
Barry, how much difference is it from a standpoint of going out onto the field? And we all, even as players, we continue to evaluate and try to one-up the other guy, the opposition. And how much difference is it when it's constant? You don't have to focus so much on catching ground balls and hitting baseballs and driving in runs. There's a lot of evaluating that goes into not only the big league club, but throughout your minor league club. You've got a lot of guys that you've got to project whether they can play for your club or not. And I'm sure that takes up a tremendous amount of your time.
And it does, but in order to evaluate the guys, you got to know the guys. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. This is all new. Well, this is obviously new to me, and it's new to Jim, and as well as Jose Rijo and Bob Boone. So it's a matter of looking at the talent and seeing what the guys do in a relaxed atmosphere, so that when they do get out on the field, you can really have a basis on which to evaluate them. So right now it's just a matter of me walking around and just looking and observing and seeing what the guys do.
Let me ask both you guys, both of you, Mr. Larkin and Mr. Brantley, are younger than this man swinging a bat right now here.
Gatto, man, he's doing it. That guy, I heard you guys talking about him earlier, and, you know, he can't hit the ball out, and I'd love for him to come off the bench as far as what he does as a player, but, you know, what he does in the clubhouse, yeah. I've had the opportunity to be in a couple of all-star games with him, and he just has a presence about himself, and he's always smiling and always positive.
Can you stay one more half inning with us? Barry Larkin will join us when we come back. More spring training baseball on the way from Florida after this. Back for the bottom of the seventh inning here at Space Coast Stadium in Viera, Florida, the home of the new Washington Nationals, who lead the New York Mets right now 4-3 as we go to the bottom of the seventh inning. Spring training just beginning, but hey, the wait is almost over. Major League Baseball opening day is coming. 30 teams, one champion. Don't miss it on ESPN. Of course, this is the first of 13 spring training telecasts that we'll have for you on the family of networks over the next several weeks. And I don't know about you, Barry, as we bring Barry Larkin back into the conversation. For guys like us, for announcers, I mean, it doesn't get any better than spring training. It's just everything starts fresh and it's fun and everybody's relaxed. As a player, what was spring training like for you, especially in the last few years of your career?
Well, in the beginning of spring training, it's everyone's optimistic. Everybody's happy. Everybody's feeling good. Like that 20th or 30th day of spring training, you're starting to go, man, all right, the sun's beating me up. You know, my skin's starting to crack. I got calluses all over the place. Let's get ready to go up north. Well, up north, we got 30-degree weather waiting on us. Right. So you're kind of like, yeah, I want to get started, but let's let it warm up a little bit. But, you know, it's always fun in spring training.
Well, you know, you talked earlier about that you thought it was time for you to step out and not continue playing. But how tough of a decision is that? I mean, this, you know, spring training was the time. This was the time you were out there getting ready to go for you. I mean, what are you feeling inside? Is there something in you is that bug there a little bit to get out there? Or are you fighting anything?
Well, you know, it's all about, for me, it's all about preparation. And in the off season, I normally take about a week off, and then I start my training regimen, whatever that's going to be, to get ready for the season. Well, a week off, and I went into the weight room, and I said, okay, I'll run on the treadmill, but I won't run as hard. And then I start going into the weight room less and less every day. I took ground balls a couple of times. I swung the bat a couple of times. And, you know, when I was in there, I was actually questioning myself. And at that particular time, when I started to question myself, that's when I knew it was time.
Barry, there were many times where you've been asked throughout your career, from your first days till the end of your days on the field, working with different second basemen, working with shortstops, even working with third basemen on playing the game of baseball, even going so far as when we played with Dion together, trying to teach him how to steal bags and influencing his play in the game. How do you take that? Because that's what I've done, is take that part of the game and fill that spot where that void is at.
That's the tough, and that's the challenge. I don't know yet, and I'm living that right now. I do have a lot of things going on right now. Shameless plug for Champion Sports Complex.
Go ahead.
But I've got some things going on, and the thing that I want to do right now is I just want to spend some time with my family. but I do still want to be associated with baseball. You know, there's a lot of knowledge out there, and I have a lot of it. You have a lot of it, and hopefully some of these young guys will come to us and ask for help. And you know, if they'd like help, I'd love to give it.
Well, I'll tell you this, Barry. There are many of us out there that have played with you and played against you, been around you. The game of baseball needs guys like you in it, and to stay in it. And whether it's whether you have different business interests outside the game, you can always find somebody to run those.
That's right.
But we need people like you in the game to keep us in a position where it's always America's favorite pastime.
That's funny, man. I just signed my contract with the Nationals, and the contract was kind of paper thin. And I was like, hey, what's going on here, man? What's going on here?
It wasn't 3 years, 21 million?
No, I wasn't quite there, but I'm happy to be here.
Wait till you see the check.
Welcome to the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
Barry Larkin joining us here in the booth today, Special Assistant to Nationals GM Jim Bowden, of course, for his entire career, a standout shortstop with the Cincinnati Reds. And Barry, you achieved so much individually, but when you think I don't know how much you've stopped and said, hey, and you know, just looked at your career as a whole now, if you've taken the time to put it in perspective, but does it all start with the championship in 1990?
That's what it's all about. I think everybody goes out there with the idea that I want to play for a world championship, and I had a chance to do that kind of early in my career, and never had an opportunity to go back. We came close a couple of times, but it's a special. That's right. It's a special time, and you know, one thing that got overlooked about that particular team, and people don't talk about it, is the fact that we went wire to wire. So we were in first place after the first day. We were in first place every single day. And I think the closest any team got to us was 3.5 games behind it. You know, that was a very special year. We had some great guys. The Nasty Boys were just incredible that year, and it just all happened to fall in place for us.
Well, you know, you played against the Expos last year, and now the Nationals, and the additions that they've brought into this team. What's your sense of the benefits of some of the players they brought in and how it's going to impact the quality of this club?
Well, the one thing that I felt about the Expos last year was that they've always had some good arms, but not much offense, and you didn't really worry about their offense. You figured if you can score 3 or 4 runs, then you'd be able to beat them. That's changed a little bit with Jose Guillen and Vinny Castilla, Christian Guzman. There's some people that can hit the ball at the ballpark. The important thing for me is basically, and I guess this is biased because it's what I did, is to try to get on base in front of those guys. And Chavez and Christian Guzman, those are going to be the guys that probably are going to be doing that, maybe Wilkerson, but Wilkerson has the ability to hit the ball at the ballpark as well. So I think it's important to emphasize guys getting on base in front of the thumpers, because the thumpers are definitely going to thump.
So it'll help you also having a healthy Nick Johnson for a season, because the guy doesn't strike out, and he can swing the bat with some pretty good consistency.
You know, and that's what I hear, but you know, that hasn't happened yet because of injuries,
right.
and only time will tell. But you know, for me, Nick Johnson is a big piece of it, and that number 1, number 2 hitter, those guys that get on in front of Guillen and Wilkerson and Castilla, because those guys are going to hit.
Barry, enjoy the beginning of your next career. Thanks for the time today.
Thank you.
Barry Larkin, now a special assistant to Jim Bowden. We'll be back to Viera, Florida after this. Top of the 8th here at Space Coast Stadium, along with Jeff Brantley, Steve Phillips, and Sam Ryan. I'm Dan Shulman. 4-3. The Nationals lead the Mets. The Washington Nationals playing their first spring training game. They'll open up, by the way, on the road, play about their first 10 games on the road. They're trying to give the Nationals as much time as they can to get RFK Stadium ready for baseball. So they're not going to have a home game until about the 14th of April. The new pitcher in for the Nationals now, it's right-hander Luis Ayala. And Ramon Castro is the batter for the Mets. They will have one tune-up game, one last spring training game the day before the regular season starts at RFK. And apparently it's going to be all ready, but that's got to be a heck of a job to get that place ready for baseball.
I think a heck of a job. I think Jim Bowden spoke earlier. They put about $14 million in to try to get it up to code and up to speed. And they're scurrying around with about 10 or 12 inches of snow right now in the area, and trying to do what they can to get it ready. And you know what? They're going to play baseball there, whether it's ready or not. So.
They got a game on the 14th.
That's right. We'll be there. Yep. Somebody will be there.
They may be sitting in folding chairs. Who knows?
Ayala with a very good arm, figures to be the primary setup man for the Nationals this year. Chad Cordero is the incumbent of sorts as the closer. So they got a couple of pretty good arms down there at the end of that pen. And I know Gary Majeski pitched the last inning. We didn't get a chance to talk about him. Barry Larkin was with us, but you guys were both impressed with what he did.
Well, we liked the stuff, but he looked like one of those American Idol contestants.
And James Castro gets a pop-up on the infield for the first out of the inning. Let's go back down to field level now. Sam Ryan is standing by with Met third baseman David Wright.
David Wright, who's having a ton of fun this spring so far. Tremendous rookie season, 14 home runs, 69 games. How do you avoid the so-called sophomore slump?
Oh, you just try to go out there, work your tail off. You know, we have a great coaching staff here, and to tap into that kind of resource and utilize the veterans on this team. This clubhouse is great. The chemistry is great. We know when to work, know when to have fun, and the young guys really utilize the veterans and the coaching staff.
And working out a lot too. Carlos Beltran invited you to work out with him. What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I thought he was playing a joke on me. You know, like in golf, they bring the rookies on the 10th hole at 10 o'clock and the sprinklers turn on. But no, it was, he was for serious, for real. We met up at Gold's Gym, and we get a good workout in pretty much on a daily basis, and it really works baseball muscles. It emphasizes agility and side-to-side lateral movements and a lot of balance.
Is it killing you?
No, not at all. It's a lot of fun. Anytime you can hang out with the superstars and see what they do to prepare themselves for the season, and hopefully a little bit of that'll rub off on me.
Now, you talk about the superstars. When you first came up, you saw Mike Piazza, you saw Tom Glavine. What were you thinking?
Oh, you're in awe at first. You're like a kid in a candy shop. You want to go ask for autographs, but you have to realize, those guys are great tools for younger players. They're more than willing to come help us out. And myself and guys like Jose Reyes, we really utilize those guys to our advantage because they're the first ones to come put their arm around you and give you advice both on and off the field.
A former Met, everybody knows the name Howard Johnson, Hojo, one of your hitting coaches. What important things has he taught you along the way?
Hojo's been almost like a baseball father to me. I've had him the last 2 years in the minor leagues, and he's really taught me how to keep a baseball diary almost. If you face a pitcher, you write him down. You write down what he tried to get you out with, the kind of things he tried to do to you at the plate. And he also taught me, when you're feeling good, have checkpoints for yourself. I feel this with my hands. I feel this with my feet. Just things that you can look off and check off when you're doing well. And when you're struggling, you can go back and look in that book and see what you have to do to be successful. Okay, so Steve Phillips tells us that you're breaking in a new glove. He was our spy for you yesterday. How is that coming along, and tell me about this process? Oh, it's a big process. You have to leave it in your locker for a couple weeks, talk to it, get it ready, and then you have to start beating it up a little bit and play around with it with a ball. You're in your condo at night and you're playing catch with yourself with a ball, just trying to break it in. And I think Steve saw a lot of balls popping out of my mitt the other day, and I used the excuse of a new glove, but it's a long process, and it takes a couple months to finally get one of those things ready. Does it ever talk back to you? When it starts talking back to me, that's when I know I'm in trouble. Thanks a lot, David. Have fun. Thank you very much.
That's what I was figuring to say. Did he say talk to it and play catch by yourself?
The future of the Mets right there.
That's right.
Talking to his glove. I'll tell you what, that is some special kid. Very humble. He knows how to behave going into the Major League clubhouse. He would wait until he was spoken to, and he does the right thing. That is one special young man, and he's loaded with talent, and it is just going to continue to blossom. And he's got the smile and the twinkle in the eye. I said earlier, he's a special young man.
Sounds like a guy. Think of what Sean Casey, what he means not only on the field, a very good player, but a guy everybody loves him, talking to everybody all the time. The kind of guy that as soon as you get him on your team, you say, boy, we want this guy to spend his whole career with us.
There's no doubt. I like that he references the coaches every time. He referenced the minor league staff when he came to the big leagues. And, he's one of those guys that's going to remember where he came from and behave the right way. It's interesting to talk to him after having Barry Larkin in the booth with us here. And, Barry Larkin is the best. He is just a gentleman and a pro, and he really defines professionalism. And it's nice to see young guys like Michael Hinckley we saw earlier with the Nationals and David Wright, who I think have the right perspective on this career.
Ron Callaway, the batter, and he pops one up for the second baseman, Jamie Carroll, who makes the catch out number 2. Cairo back to first base for the Mets, who trail 4-3 here in the 8th inning. Well, what about the Mets and their shot, and the Nationals for that matter? Both teams looking at the National League East, what appears to be a very competitive division. There's been a lot of turnover, as there always is in this day and age in baseball. But how do you guys look at the NL East?
Well, I look at it as the Braves and the Marlins are going to be the teams that you've got to go get. I think And you look at the Phillies and you think, well, this is going to be the year that they can't blame it on the manager.
Right.
It's going to be the 25 guys that they run out there, and they're either going to decide they're going to play, or they're going to fold it up like a tent and they'll dismantle that club as fast as they put it together.
Now we see all the moves that we have right there. A lot of movement within the league and a lot of upgrades in the National League East. I mean, you talk about teams improving themselves in the offseason and which teams had good offseasons. You're going to look at just about every one of these teams in this division as having really improved themselves. And, some did it by signing free agents. Some did it as the Atlanta Braves did by being creative and making blockbuster deals. Getting Danny Colt from the Milwaukee Brewers, moving John Smoltz into the rotation, and then going and getting a guy like Tim Hudson, one of the elite pitchers in the game, and Delgado and Leiter going to the Marlins. So it is going to be some kind of race in the National League East this year.
Blanco into foul territory to make the catch on the pop-up. Gerald Williams and the Mets are retired. We'll go to the bottom of the 8th. Nationals up 4-3. Now there's a guy embracing the old and also welcoming in the new. Wearing a Washington Senators jersey and a new Washington Nationals cap. Time now for today's game track presented by the Hampton Inn. Jose Guillen with a long home run to right center field for the Nationals. That tied the game at 2. Carlos Beltran had a solid base hit up the middle in his second at bat. And then Jason Phillips with a shot into right field, a base hit to cash in Beltran with a run. But right now the Mets are trailing 4-3, bottom of the 8th, as left-hander Mike Matthews becomes the new pitcher for the Mets, and Ian Desmond, the young shortstop, gets the at-bat for the Nationals. Of course, none of the guys who started the game are still in the game. Day 1 of spring training, and most of the regulars got 2. Some of them got 3 at-bats. Matthews' numbers with the Reds last year.
And I think that even though this is at the end of the ball game, you're not facing the regular guys that maybe started the ball game. This is an important outing, as will every outing be for a guy like Matthews, because they have got to find a left-hander to put in that New York Mets bullpen, one way or the other.
Well, you're exactly right. Felix Heredia came in today, and he had his struggles last year with the Yankees, and the Mets acquired him for Mike Stanton, who at time, through a lot of pitching a lot of games, struggled a little bit for the Mets as well. They swapped left-handers, but Heredia came in struggling today, and the Achilles heel for the Mets right now, their main weakness is that bullpen, and they're looking. This is an audition time where Tom Glavine comes out to get his work in. These guys are out here needing to perform to show that they get the job done.
And Desmond is thrown out by a step at first. Nice play by Danny Garcia. More spring training baseball coming your way tomorrow right here on ESPN. Again at 1 Eastern. And you'll get a look at the other New York team as the Yankees take on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Major League Baseball spring training variety right here on ESPN. Now, Randy Johnson was originally scheduled to make the start, but has been scratched with a slightly strained calf, something that he doesn't seem to think is too serious. Yankee fans will be holding their breath, making sure that the big unit is available for opening day. Yankees and Red Sox went at each other in the offseason for sometimes vying for the same players. And then the last couple of weeks, Jeff, get your thoughts on this. Players talking back and forth to one another. He said this, he did this. And, man, can't they wait until opening day to get on each other's nerves?
The thing about it is, I think that as long as you can talk all you want and you can say all the things that you want to say, but when it comes down to game time, you better put it up or you know what.
Well, they'll get a chance to do that opening night. It's the ESPN Sunday night opener of the season. The Red Sox in New York to take on the Yankees. Garcia upset with himself, can't come up with that one. And Carroll is safely across.
This is a smart pitcher right here. You see him pull that hand back down? You can put that glove up there and let it bank off the glove, but if it hits you in the hand and breaks your fingers, kiss the baby. You can go on to the house.
Especially in spring training when you're vying to make a team. You can't risk missing 1 or 2 outings because that's opportunity to you in spring training.
Base hit for Carroll. Runner at first, 1 out. Pretty big lead over there, and he draws a throw for Matthews. What do you guys think of all the moves that the Red Sox and Yankees made? Steve, you touched on the Edgar Renteria move for Boston. Randy Johnson coming to New York. How do you think the two teams stack up against one another going into this season?
I think it's going to be very close, and it's just going to be a matter of which one's the wild card, which one wins that division because, you know, the New York Yankees set out this offseason to address their pitching staff. They wanted to get that starting rotation fixed. They went and got Randy Johnson. They have Mike Mussina now moving to the 2 spot, and then Carl Pavano, who everybody else was going to sign as an ace, they have in the 3 spot in that rotation. They have great depth in that rotation. Jared Wright, who was the ace of the Atlanta Braves, is their 4th starter, and it allows them really to give Kevin Brown a chance to figure out what he can do. We look back, Kevin Brown was good when he pitched healthy last year. Their problem is that they don't have much depth of pitching beyond those 5. Those 5 are pretty good when they're healthy, but they don't have that protection. We see Randy Johnson with the calf strain. They need to go out and have that insurance policy. Last year it was El Duque Hernandez rehabbing in AAA, and what a job he did for them down the stretch. You know, John Lieber performed better in the second half of the year. But I think that the Yankees starting staff and then adding Stanton and Felix Rodriguez to that bullpen, that gave them some depth out there as well. I think their pitching staff's going to be phenomenal.
I mean, who knows who exactly is going to be healthy, but in the bullpen in front of Rivera now, just from the right side, Carsey, Rodriguez, Quantrill, and Gordon. Right?
That's pretty good.
I mean, it's nuts.
Pretty good.
Well, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see Rodriguez early in the ball game, and they'll go back to the Gordon and Rivera finishing games up. But the key for them last year is they really didn't have anybody early in the season that could pitch quality innings in the 5th, 6th, and 7th. Therefore, you had a lot of strain on the staff early in the season, and it showed up when they came down the line.
Well, that's exactly right. The Red Sox kept the pressure on the Yankees, and then late in the year, where Joe Torre might have wanted to have rested Tom Gordon and Mariano Rivera a little bit, he couldn't because the Red Sox made such a charge. In the end, I think they wore out Gordon and Rivera a little bit for the postseason, and they need to have some games early in the year where they just say, today, you guys are off, take a break, because ultimately their goal is not only to just get to the postseason, they want to win this year, and they need, in order to win, they need a fresh bullpen when they get there.
So Yankees and Pirates tomorrow afternoon, 1 Eastern here on ESPN, and then on Friday afternoon, it'll be the Dodgers and the Braves. I think you're going to be doing that game.
I am doing that, yes.
Talk about a couple of teams who have made some changes as well. Tim Hudson now with Atlanta, and Dan Cole with Atlanta, and John Smoltz back in the rotation, and the Dodgers are like a completely different team than they were a year ago.
They really are. I mean, the Dodgers were a very interesting offseason. I mean, you know, they won last year with quality pitching and defense. They had great depth in that bullpen. They had Guillermo Mota and Darren Dreifert leading up to Eric Gagne, who was nearly perfect for the year. Dreifert and Mota are gone. Dreifert's hurt. Mota's now in Florida as part of that trade. And defense was a key. They had Adrian Beltre at third base and Alex Cora at second. They're both gone now. Jose Valentin plays third. Jeff Kent second base. And they're a much lesser defensive team in my view. They trade Sean Greenaway. They lose Steve Finley. They lose Beltre's bat and replace him with J.D. Drew and Jeff Kent and Valentin. I look at them as really having the possible potential of sliding to really a 4th place team in that division, where the Giants, to me, seem to be the class of the division with the Padres up and coming. And listen, the Arizona Diamondbacks are much improved, and I think may actually beat out the Dodgers.
I think one of the biggest things that we're going to watch in the National League East, and we were talking about Smoltz moving back into the rotation, and I think that's going to be a big move. It's very easy. Well, I won't say that it's easy, but it's much easier to go from the rotation into the bullpen and pitch 1 or 2 innings than it is as we see another ball get into the outfield on the Mets.
Well, it's not been a great defensive day, really, for either of these teams here today. We could have about 7 or 8 errors on the board, depending on how things are being scored today.
But I think when you look at John Smoltz, it's going to take a tremendous amount of work on his part, especially the age that he's at, and to be able to keep himself where he can go out there and pitch 5 or 6 innings each time that he goes out. And it's not going to be easy on him. I know what he's done in the past, and everybody knows that he is a great pitcher. But the reason, and let's don't forget this, the reason he went from the rotation into the bullpen was because of that elbow.
Yeah.
And no slider from John Smoltz makes him very ordinary.
But he has said over the last couple of years that he thinks starting would actually be easier on the elbow than closing would. But you've done both, Jeff. How do you feel?
Well, I can tell you this right now. It's nice to be able to play the golf on the 4 days when you're off. But getting into the 5th and the 6th inning is probably about as tough of job as you can do. I would rather be able to pitch 1 inning each day than to have to go out there and pitch 7 consecutive innings.
Yeah, the argument on the other side is that there's structured innings as a starter. You can protect them and recover for 4 days. but it is going to be a transition. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but if anybody can do it, John Smoltz has been phenomenal. The Tim Hudson acquisition to me for that rotation has just been tremendous. And John Schuerholz, the general manager for the Braves, he has done it for 13 consecutive years, and has put them in a position again to do it. And again, a way that's different than everybody else. The Mets went out and they bought Pedro Martinez and Carlos Beltran. John Schuerholz had built the farm system. They reconfigured their team by making creative trades. I mean, to be able to have the luxury of moving John Smoltz in the rotation, to pick up Danny Kolb, and then going to get a Tim Hudson says a lot, not only for the Major League team, John Schuerholz, but for the depth of that minor league system as well.
And let's remember this, too. Leo Mazzoni will make sure that all of the guys are staying on the same page. I think Danny Kolb will be a better pitcher than he's ever been, simply because he will understand what his job and what his role is, and they will protect him in that role. I think you get a guy like Hudson in there where he's on the same page every single day, is going to make him that much better of a pitcher. And I know he's done a lot of great things in Oakland, but I still don't think we've seen the best of Tim Hudson. And that's scary.
Pitch lined into center field, a base hit for Brendan Harris. Will cash in another run as the Nationals up their lead to 5-3. Well, let me ask you about the division and the prospects for these two teams. I mean, a lot of people are talking about the Braves and the Marlins, and it's just a year ago when a lot of people were handing the division to the Phillies, and that didn't work out as Harris lines went into center, as you see, for the RBI single. Can the Mets, because there's so much excitement because of Beltran and Pedro, can the Mets or the Nationals win the division, become a wild card, compete? How good are these two teams?
I don't know that the Nationals are in that category that we would say that, yes, they have an opportunity to win this division. Can they be competitive? Sure they can. But they have a lot of young talent on this ball club that's got to develop and to prove themselves. There are a lot of guys that play on this Mets club. They've got a good mix of old talent and young talent, and they've got a chance. They pitch well, they've got a chance.
Hey, everybody's undefeated today. It's the best part about day one of spring training. We'll be back for the 9th after this. Team in Viera, Florida, along with Steve Phillips, Jeff Brantley, and Sam Ryan. I'm Dan Shulman. The Washington Nationals, their first spring training game, leading 5-3 over Willie Randolph and the New York Mets. Willie's seen some subpar defense today, but guys, he's also seen some infield defense he's got to be happy with.
Well, there's no question about that. I think that one of the keys to this team is whether Kaz Matsui can make that transition to second base. And he looked like a natural today. I mean, he made a number of plays, moving very well. They had one play where they had a miscommunication, but that's going to happen a little bit. But I liked his athletic ability out there. He moved very well and very comfortably. Again, I think the key is going to be how he turns that double play, being blind to the runner, and how comfortable he is being able to do that.
I think on both of those plays there, we saw one play where he comes in knowing the speed of the runner. He's got a barehanded and make a do-or-die play. The next time he knows the speed of the runner, he's got a little bit more time. He gloves it, and then he flips the ball to second base. But they were the same type of play, but it shows you his athletic ability and his awareness of who the guys are that are standing at the plate. And this is a guy that hasn't played against any of these people.
Marlon Anderson is the batter now.
That's a great point, because when you make that transition, it's understanding where you are in time and space and how you should make the play. And I think that's a great point. It shows very good instincts on Matsui's part. I think this is going to happen pretty easily for him.
Anderson gone on 3 pitches as Chad Cordero strikes him out. Well, let's not forget about the Montreal Expos. There's some fans of the Expos still wearing their colors. Just kind of a different version of red, white, and blue for the Expos, and the Nationals the same color scheme right now. But it was a situation, guys, that had to end. Unfortunately, it was messy and painful for a lot of people because it took so long. And we shouldn't forget that the Nationals still don't have an owner. They're still being owned by the rest of Major League Baseball, and hopefully that's going to get resolved at some point soon. But the Expos will wind up years from now being a footnote, I guess, in Major League Baseball, just like the old Washington Senators were until the Nationals were rebuilt. There must have been some times, Jeff, back when you started, when they were drawing decent crowds and had pretty good teams, and it could be I know the stadium stunk, everybody knows that, but as a town, and there was a small, but the 15 or 20,000 core fans there, they absolutely loved baseball. They just there was nobody else around to join them.
Well, in the early days when they were winning a lot of ball games and putting money into the ball club, regardless of how the stadium looked, they put a lot of people in the stands. But as time went on, for some reason or another, they started to unload their superstar players. And I mean, you look around the game of baseball even today, guys that you could make a virtual all-star team of the guys that they let loose.
Pedro Martinez, who we've been talking about.
Randy Johnson.
Yeah, Larry Walker. Great players.
And you know that if that was any other organization that had any semblance of money or any way to run a ball club the way that you're supposed to run it, at least you get to keep some of those guys.
2 down here in the 9th inning. And some of the crowd starting to get a beat on the traffic out of this place. A 5-3 lead for the Nationals. Chad Cordero is on the mound right now for Washington. A guy with a pretty good arm, and he figures to be their closer.
Watching him pitch in the College World Series 2 years ago, then seeing him have an opportunity to pitch in the big leagues. You talk to this guy, he's very unassuming. It's not that he's a quiet guy, he just has a quiet confidence about him. And you ask him, well, what is it that you try to do when you go out there on the mound? How do you handle the pressure at the end of the ball game? And he says, well, you handle pressure by attacking the hitter and you throw strikes with 2 pitches. And he can do it.
Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it?
Well, it does. But, you know, the thing that I try to impress on all of the pitchers, especially guys that are pitching at the end of the ball game, is you have to control the adrenaline animal. If you don't control that, it will control you, and you'll throw the ball all over the place.
And the Nationals, look out, as we have a collision at the plate. The throw down to first. And that is your ball game. Collision at the plate and the drop, 3rd strike. But the game is over as the Nationals fire down to first. Chad Cordero will be credited with a save. In the first game, it was just a spring training game. Doesn't matter in the overall scheme of things. But the first game is a winner for Frank Robinson and the Nationals, to the delight of a sellout crowd of better than 7,500 here today. And guys, it was fun to be back doing baseball today. And I think we got a lot of excitement in store here coming up in the 2005 season.
Well, really, no doubt. For both of these teams, a lot of excitement. Obviously, for the Nationals, the fresh start and moving in the right direction for their organization. And for the Mets, you know what, getting a chance to see Carlos Beltran play, it's going to get a lot better for Mets fans as well.
Well, I agree with you, but I think the strength of a ball club is definitely up the middle. They've got Piazza back behind the plate. I think that's going to help him swing the bat. You've got Reyes and Matsui up the middle, which I think can only get better as time moves on. And they've got the prize free agent in Carlos Beltran in center field. That tells me that this club is on their way to getting back to where we've seen the New York Mets in the past.
So Frank Robinson and the Nationals defeat the New York Mets here today 5-3. Don't forget the Yankees and Pirates tomorrow afternoon on ESPN. The Dodgers and Braves Friday afternoon on ESPN as our spring training coverage continues. Again, the final from Viera, Florida. The Nationals 5 and the Mets 3. For Steve Phillips, Jeff Brantley, Sam Ryan, and our entire ESPN crew, I'm Dan Shulman. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com. ESPN News is next. So long from Space Coast Stadium.
The Mets' 2 major offseason pickups off to a good start. Mets cards today. Pedro getting plenty of offensive help. Cliff Floyd, extra bases here with a couple of guys on. Jose Reyes, Carlos Beltran will both score. The Mets working it. Mike Piazza. Ooh, like the sound of that. This is a drive to right center. Jim Edmonds playing center. Not exactly hustling after that when it drops in. Reyes scores again. Piazza now behind the plate. Working on this all spring, and the shoot looks good. Got the runner at second. Pedro Martinez worked 3 innings today, gave up 1 earned, struck out 3. Jose Reyes and Kaz Matsui with 2 hits apiece. The Mets win it 7-5.
Yeah, it went pretty good. I got a chance to work on all my pitches. Not all of them worked the way I wanted them to work, but it was good enough to just know that I feel good, feel comfortable on the mound, and I'm ready to go.
Plenty more good things to come out of him. Yankees Pirates from Bradenton today. Carl Pavano pitches scoreless 2 innings. Some fun here. Tony Womack and Tino got the runner tied up, and Tino decides, hey, let's throw it home. Jorge's got his man. Matt Lawton dead to rights at the plate. Bubba Crosby this spring working on driving the ball deep to right. Keep working. It's working out pretty well right now. 3-run shot, although the Pirates did come back to beat the Yankees. They went 5
Aces
down.
up. Pedro Martinez, front and center for the first time as a Met against Major League Baseball opposition. It's the Mets and the Cardinals from Jupiter, Florida. And there, Pedro looked impressive at times. Here's a good pitch, but pass ball by Mike Piazza. Brought one Cardinal home. Piazza, though, did make up for his defensive blunder later with that shot. To right center field, good for a double that would bring home 2 Masons. Martinez ended up allowing 2 runs over 3 innings, just 1 earned. The Mets scored a 7-5 victory.
It went pretty good. I got a chance to work on all my pitches. Not all of them worked the way I wanted them to work, but it was good enough.
All right. In Bradenton, the friendly city, Yankees pitcher Carl Bavano had the spotlight. The Yanks taking on the Pirates again. Bavano gave up 3 hits over 2 innings, but he didn't give up a run, struck out 2 batters, and the Yankees helped out here. They didn't get the man at first, but they got the big one. At home. You're out. That's what counts, isn't it? Meanwhile, the Bubba Crosby continues to state his case on why he does belong in pinstripes. Did it last year, does it this year. 3-run homer. Yanks built a 6-1 lead. The reserves blew it. Yanks lose 9-6, but the